Okay, just letting you know, this was done on Sunday morning. I interviewed Josh, Dazzle's father, and about 45 minutes in, Dr. Dan got in the comments and wanted to come on, and then Dr. Oosterhouse joined us for balance, and then Dr. Dan called Dr. Phil Altman a conspiracy nut job, so Dr. Phil Altman came on to defend himself, and it goes for 2 hours, and it's a hell of a thing, Anyway, I've been asked to replay it and cut it down. So here it is. I don't know whether enjoying is the word, but here it is. This is the vicious COVID debate. Let's hope it plays.
And the society has that issue with her. Now she's going to be 17 if she reaches March. This is the thing, Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's crazy.
And I've sent him an invite. I'm just reaching out to see if he does come on. We should get hopefully we should get another doctor on too. So maybe Dr. Phil Altman might. So if you're going to come on, Daniel, I have sent you an invite, but because we're not doctors, and you will hit us with all the doctor stuff, we'll see if Dr. Oosterhouse or Dr. Phil Altman will come on and join you, so that it's balanced. But that's, to me, is the thing. For whatever reason, this girl has decided, and she's basically prepared to die without taking it.
She is.
I mean, she is aware of that. She knows she's not going to. She sent me something because I never thought that I would end up having a relationship with a 16-year-old half Filipino girl, but we text a lot, and I adore her. I adore her, and I feel that she spends so much time on the other side. She's like half angel, like coded. She comes back, but and she's got to stick around anyway because I owe her $50, and she's not going to get it if she passes on.
Hold it, Ransom.
That's right.
But this one, just take a quick second, mate. Just to think. Look, I'm going to forget people, and I'm sorry because everyone knows how grateful we are. I just want to thank everyone that's been there for us and fundraised and helped us. They said I get another thing that I get flack for is they think I'm driving around in a Ferrari, and wearing Dolce & Gabbana and Gucci clothing and all that. I mean, I shop at Target and Big W and the op shop. Like I'm a big timer. But I just wanted to thank everyone. Mel that created Daisies for Dazzle. Tracy and Melissa and all the team, Michelle and all them that have that work for Heart for Vicky, beautiful Vicky that's in a similar situation, nearly the similar situation as Dazzle. Everybody that's reached out, the A1 team, Ricardo Bosi and Craig Cole at A1, D from up there in Woody's Heroes. There's just so many people that have helped us. Liz and Marty, like Liz has done a lot for us on the backgrounds. Our Auntie Linda, Vicky from our friend up in Singleton. There's just so many people. Brad at the Cali. I know I'll forget somebody, and I'm so sorry if I do. But I just want everyone to know that's helped us.
Even the artist who's teaching her how to paint.
Georgia, a beautiful volunteer that comes to the hospital a couple of times a week and teaches Dazzle how to draw. And
now I've got Dr. Daniel Nino coming on now. He's not got the best bedside manner, so I'm just warning you. If you don't want to stick around, I'll talk with him.
He can say what he likes. He can say what he likes. I've heard it all before.
G'day, Dr. Dan.
G'day, Mike. G'day, Josh.
Oh, I got Dr. here.
Coming for breakfast?
Two secs. No, Borshos. 2 secs. 2 secs, guys.
Can you hear me right, Josh?
Yeah, mate. I got you.
Just to say, the reason I started interacting with Michael at all was that your daughter's case completely gutted me. It's tragic.
Thank you.
And want to make a difference, essentially, because you've probably seen online that my position is entirely mainstream.
Yeah,
that I think the vaccine's a good thing. And
Yeah.
that when I see people that are crook, and I think from my perspective, I think it's going to do her a favor to get it. I feel gutted that she's missing out.
Yeah, no, fair enough.
That's my perspective. And what I've never understood, because I only ever hear things third hand, is why she made the call not to have it. I understood that the mRNA vaccine's scared her because somebody's told her that it might kill her.
Yeah.
But there's a protein-based vaccine, the Novavax, which has no mRNA in it, so it doesn't risk her heart.
Yeah.
And I hadn't heard whether she'd ever been offered that, and whether, because originally that wasn't offered to kids, that was only an adults vaccine, but it's now available to kids as of last year.
Yeah.
Whether the doctors would offer her that, and what her feeling is about taking that up to try and get her a transplant.
Yeah, well, Dan, when they told us about the whole situation that she required the vaccines to have the transplant, my wife actually asked them about Novavax, because my wife, she's like a little bull at a gate. She doesn't sleep. She's looking at every single option available for this child, to try and give her choices. And it was funny because I don't know how it works with the hospital system, but when she spoke to the oncologist, we mentioned Novavax, or Dinah did, and they said they'd never even heard of it. And we advised Pfizer, I think, or Moderna, like the big ones, I think the big top three. But she said, I've never even heard of Novavax. And Dinah had even mentioned maybe you should have a look into it because it's available on the market. And would that be an option for Dazzle if that's what Dazzle chooses? And
spot on.
She said, well, the oncologist that John Hunter said, well, I've never even heard of it, so this is what we recommend.
So if she was a pediatric oncologist, are they little people oncologists? Yeah, so they wouldn't have access to it until November. I think December last year it was approved for kids, so they weren't allowed to use it in kids until last year. So literally now it's available. And if you listen to Nick Petrosky, who is really skeptical about the mRNA vaccines, is not a fan of Pfizer at all, he's developed his own spike protein-based vaccine, and they're successful in the Middle East. And I've got a heap of patients who came to see me early on, and sick heart failure patients in their 70s and 80s. And they said, look, I'm scared of this new vaccine. I'm not going anywhere near it, but if you can get me Petrosky's vaccine, I'm in. So I tried to get hold of it and enrolled them in Petrosky's clinical trial, so they had access to it. And then the minute the Novavax became available, I contacted all those patients. I said, remember how you were scared of mRNA vaccines? We've finally got one in the country you can take, protein-based vaccine. You don't have to worry about gene therapy. You don't have to worry about long-term side effects. Here's a traditional vaccine that does the job. And I thought, here we go. This is the solution. I hope it's been offered, because if it isn't, let's scream at them to get that. Because if we can get that into her, she's potentially lining up for transplant again. I actually managed to track down the transplant physician who you saw at St. Bees and said, look, what's the deal? And he said, no, Novavax originally was not available, but it's now an option for her. I hope that the message gets through to her that this is an option for her. And I've said it to Michael 1,000 times, and I've said it to the scientist you're trying to get on, Michael. Okay, 10 times, Michael. And did you offer it to Dazzle? Did you tell her that Novavax was available when I told it to you to try and save her life, to try and get her a transplant?
Michael actually told me about it.
I actually have talked to her.
And what was the response, Michael? What was the response about Novavax?
She doesn't want to take it. She
Why?
just has a deep spiritual belief that she doesn't want to take it. She's working on some inner voice. And that's a lot of people
got to respect that.
Maybe you're not a believer of that. Maybe you're not a believer of a spiritual form of life. I don't know, brother. But
Dan, just quickly, if I can. Just quickly, if I can.
I don't know you. I don't know
quickly.
You. What I know is she has a. Sorry.
No, I'm not defending Michael, but just on that, Michael did tell me that you'd contacted him about Novavax, and he did pass on the information, and I'd spoken to Dazzle about it. Dinah and I both had, and in the same situation as we're still in now. So, but I just didn't Michael defend. He did pass on your name, and he did pass on your.
Then I'll tell you. I'm glad you did. I think it was important. So, Josh, when you spoke to Dazzle, why did she choose not to take up the Novavax vaccine as an option?
I guess, like I said, I can't explain the medical side of things, but she doesn't want anything to do with the COVID vaccine at all. It's her thing. She's her cousin overseas is the same age. Admittedly, she didn't have Novavax. She had Pfizer, but she's had a stroke after the second vaccination. Her uncles have got issues now with their hearts and stuff. And I understand what you're saying, Novavax doesn't have that sort of issues with the heart, from what you're saying. So, but look, I don't know what more to say. Dazzle just doesn't want them. So she said she's had everything. She's had all the childhood vaccines, up to date with everything because of the bone marrow transplant. She had to get everything again. And she's scared because every time, like this time, like I mentioned in the show, I don't know if you've seen it earlier, she had the last, I don't know exactly which ones they were, the last 2 childhood vaccines before she came in here, before she was admitted, I think on the November the 2nd. She had the the last 2 vaccinations, childhood vaccines. And then on that Sunday, you know, there's 3 ambulances at the unit taken her to hospital. So she's petrified, mate. Petrified.
I understand. That's exactly the problem. I get the impression that she's really scared.
She is.
I'd hate for her to miss out on a good treatment because she's got the risks out of proportion because she's scared, and we've got to support her through that. See, from my perspective, I weigh up the risks and the benefits. What's the risk of the vaccine? What's the benefit of the vaccine? And for the average 16-year-old, the risk benefits borderline. So if the friends of mine come and say, do you think my kids should be vaccinated? I said, look, it's your call. My kids chose to be vaccinated. I've got teenage kids because I sell it as a reasonable thing to do, but it's not going to be life or death for them. But for this girl, it's completely life or death. And that's why I'd hate for her to be getting I'd hate for her fear to be driving her decision. I think Michael often speaks that he's worried that the country's been driven by fear and people are making bad decisions because they're scared. And I'd hate for her to make a bad decision because she's scared. Is she still in contact with any transplant physicians?
Yeah, mate. Look, St. Vincent's, I don't know what's going on. I spoke to the doctors here yesterday. The doctors and everyone have been great here at the City Children's Hospital. Like, they're so good. But the St. Vinny's team came just before Christmas, and because no one, apart from Ben Zimra, that she had that meeting with at Vinny's, no one's actually seen her or put hands on her. So they just came and did I guess what doctors call it, specialist, like a general, just to check her strength and put eyes on her and look at her notes and stuff. And they were happy with her strength and everything. Her heart's in a good position. Like, her heart's pretty good. And they were here for probably half an hour. They didn't even talk about transplant, but then they called back and they asked for her to get just a CT scan on her heart. But at the moment, because to get that, she's got to go into the Prince of Wales to get the imaging. And at the moment, because of her lungs, they're too scared to move her down into that area because it's a fair way away from where they are. So we're still waiting to get that done. But that's one thing biddies have asked for, but she's done everything they've asked for. Like, now she's done the whole lot, and they've just come back and said they want that done now. So I
know you had that one appointment with Mark, and I didn't know if there was a follow-up to, again, start to work your way through the process, because transplants are long, right?
There was a follow-up at some stage with Mark, but the way that Mark came across with Dazzle and the things that he'd said, you probably heard it, it just put her in a horrible place. He just had zero compassion for the child. I don't think he thought about what he was saying. I don't know if because he's used to dealing with adults, I don't know, but he put that child in the worst place mentally that she's ever been in.
So you had a follow-up appointment, did you ask to see a different doctor instead? Because again, I don't want this kid to miss out on treatment because you didn't the doctor that they sent.
In time, the social workers, when we talked Dazzle into actually, will you go back and see somebody else? Because that was obviously something we spoke about with the team at John Hunter.
There are other doctors. You don't have to deal with that guy again.
Yeah. Well, they said, are you happy to see somebody else? And then we said yes, but then Dazzle was just in and out of hospital, and she was in hospital more than she was out of hospital. So when we got here, we came down here in the end of November. The end of October, start this ECP treatment for Dazzle, because she just started the new drug to Rezurock, and the combination together is apparently very good for graft-versus-host disease.
Yep.
As a combination treatment, and the Sunday before she was meant to start the ECP on the Monday, that's when she came into hospital and she hasn't left. So she didn't get the chance to do ECP.
So your last appointment with the transplant team with Mark was last year?
It was last year something.
So after that, have you seen any doctors from the transplant team since then? Because if we want to get her a transplant, you have to maintain that connection.
No. We had, because Dazzle said that. Well, Dazzle made a mind up. She said that they're not going to give me the transplant. So what am I bothering for? Because I don't want the shot. So she, like I said, mentally it destroyed her. So
we have to build that back up again, basically. If she's been mentally broken down, we have to support her and help build her back up again. As I said, you don't have to deal with that doctor again. There are other people in transplant teams. You can go to the Alfred, you can go to St. Vincent's. There are other people you can see. I'd hate for a bad doctor-patient interaction to screw up a chance for getting a transplant, because every vibe I'm getting, I don't know her medical history, but every vibe I'm getting is she's going downhill, and transplant is the only destination, or palliative care, transplant or palliative care in a young lady.
That's right.
So how do we get
Just
her
let
a
me
transplant?
know. We've got 15% battery left. Okay, sorry.
No worries. So how do we get her reconnected with a transplant team? How do we get her to think about reconsidering Novavax? She's scared of the vaccine. What if her fear is out of proportion to the actual risk? Paul might comment on what he thinks the risks of a protein-based vaccine, a traditional vaccine. Talk to Petrovsky. I think you've got connections with Nick Petrovsky. He's a vaccine expert internationally. He's not a mainstream guy. You might trust him more than my opinion. But if the transplant team says, now that Novavax is approved for kids, this would be a pathway to get her a transplant without having to worry about mRNA. I imagine Dazzle's scared shitless of mRNA. And if the Novavax is an alternative, let's use that pathway. But you've got to maintain contact with the transplant unit, because to get a transplant is a long process. You've got to have a major commitment. You've got to have a lot of preparation. And you've got to trust these doctors to keep her alive afterwards. Transplant's all about compliance. They have to know that she's going to do the follow-up, that she's going to take the drugs, that she's going to be compliant. And if she comes in and says, I don't trust you, I'm not going to take the tablets, the lungs will be rejected and she'll die of rejection. So they've got to have that bond with the transplant physician. She's got to trust them. They've got to trust her to get through that process. I mean, she's trusting them to rip her lungs out, to put in new lungs, and to give her drugs that are so strong they suppress your immune system, might kill her. But they don't trust their opinion about vaccination. That's the thing that doesn't get in my head, is that she trusts them with chemotherapy.
The thing that doesn't get in my head is what you just said makes sense, and you've been reasonable, but you talk about the transplant team, and then you just scant over the fact that Darren Hinch, perfect example, old man, needs a new liver, stops drinking, destroyed his liver with alcoholism, gets the liver transplant, goes back to drinking.
Complete disgrace.
And so
it's tragic.
You're living in a thing of how magically the world works. In reality, it doesn't.
I'm living in a world where I've looked after transplant patients. How many transplant?
No, you were on last time, the mRNA. I'm sorry, mate. The mRNA is killing people all over the fucking world.
Disagree strongly. Saving lives. Saving lives. It's a fucking lifesaver.
It's bullshit. The death
How much do you have a science PhD, you genius? Have you got a medical degree? Have you treated anybody with COVID? Have you treated anybody with COVID? Have you treated anybody with COVID?
And I ask people
Are you a
big
doctor?
gatherings to
Talk to
stand
Dr.
up.
Paul. Does COVID kill people?
He's there. I ask people to stand up. Hey, I listen to you, mate.
Does COVID kill people?
Respect.
I've got respect for Josh. I've got little respect for you because you're talking bullshit.
I listen to you. I listen to you. You've just sat there and I've listened to hear it out. I go meeting after meeting and I ask people, and I've got it on videos, stand up if you know of anyone who just died of COVID. Hardly anyone stands up, maybe one. And then we ask the room to stand up if they know of anyone who's been injured or killed by the vaccine. And literally time after time, the whole room stands up. You don't need a PhD to see that there's a fucking problem there.
You do need a PhD. Let me tell you why.
You are so wrapped up in your religion, you can't see straight. Because you know they exist, you know they work, so you can't possibly conceive that they can't. And people out here are dying. People are sick all the time. And you're a cardiologist. And I know that every cardiologist is book solid. People can't see them. So if you're not book solid, there's something wrong with you, mate.
I'm
not the thing. There's people out there. I've got another mate whose son, and now the doctors are admitting it. Young people, 18 with myocarditis. And you said last time, oh, well, that shit happens. That's what you said. Shit happens.
1 in 10,000.
And you said you get myocarditis all the time. Bullshit. The data is against you, brother. The data is against you.
Let me present the data. Would you like a link? Would you like a link?
We've had the data. You just got your own data.
You haven't looked at the data. No. Oh, so the Cardiac Society of Australia and New Zealand's data is better than Michael the actor's data. Living down the rear out of a bus. You're a fucking scientist now, are you? Such an idiot.
No. I get scientists on them,
such an idiot. I have a science PhD. I'm a specialist traveling for 30 years. I've treated myocarditis. I've treated COVID. Have you treated severe COVID, Michael? I have. It's shit. It will kill Dazzle. You know, Dazzle had COVID and nearly died. If she catches it again, she will die.
So she's immune to it now.
She's got
natural immunity. For 6 months. You understand that natural immunity works?
I didn't understand better than you. It wanes after 6 months.
She
nearly died. She
was
died.
sick.
She was in ICU.
She was sick with leukemia, and she got over
Yes.
COVID, even though she was really sick. She got over
She
it.
was in intensive
how
care and she
deadly
nearly
COVID
died.
is.
And other people died. She was
That
lucky she
nearly.
didn't die. She had good
Yeah,
treatment.
but lucky. What saved her? She didn't have the vaccine.
Medical treatment,
What saved her?
mainstream medical treatment,
What
mainstream
saved her?
medical
A mask?
treatment.
Did she have the
No,
mask save her?
intubation,
Was
a
it the mask
ventilator.
that saved her? Was it your arrogance that
Such a
saved her?
fucking
Did you
prick.
just put across your arrogance? I mean, what
You're
the fuck
talking about
happened?
my
She
arrogance? What about your
survived.
arrogance, you
She
prick?
was on
What about
death's
your
door,
arrogance?
and she
You're a
survived
fucking
COVID.
arrogant actor who's got no idea about science. Let's bring in Paul.
No, an
Come
actor,
on, Paul.
mate. Playwright.
Join in.
There's a now the
Oh, you're a
thing is,
playwright, so you've got medical degrees.
yeah, that's how I was
You've
making my
medical
living.
advice now, and science, the ability to interpret science. What's the nocebo effect,
When
Michael?
you were in medical school, how long did you spend studying vaccines? Now we know that from a lot
Longer
of doctors
than
out
you.
there.
Longer than
How
you.
long? How long?
We do immunology and microbiology for a year.
How long did you
How long have
study
you studied it,
vaccines?
Michael?
We know from William Bay he did an afternoon.
William's
And
not
all
even
they
his
said
real
was
name.
vaccine
Why
work.
do you take any advice from Adrian? Adrian has
How
no
do you
clue.
explain thalidomide?
Adrian's a deluded
How do you
narcissist.
explain thalidomide? Our Prime Minister
What would you like to
just
know?
apologized to thalidomide victims.
What would you like to know?
Apologized, right?
Thalidomide's a tragedy.
everyone
And guess
got it
how we found
through.
out about thalidomide, Michael? How did we find out about
20
thalidomide?
years.
Mainstream. How did you
20
find out?
years
How
of
did we
people
find
being
out?
injured and
How did we
damaged
find
because
out?
you guys believe so much. The
How did you
problem
find
here,
out?
Dan,
Science,
is
Michael.
arrogance.
You're
It's
the arrogant
arrogant.
prick, Michael. You're the arrogant
I'm
prick.
an arrogant prick.
Yes, you're the
Why
arrogant
am I
prick
an
because
arrogant
you.
prick? One skill
Okay,
I have
because
that you don't, mate, is I listen to
you-
people and then I let them tell their stories, even if the society doesn't like it. Where
You're
you,
famous.
because I start saying things you don't want to hear, you just steamroll over me because you don't want to fucking hear it because it affects your life.
Let me explain.
You know,
You're arrogant
you
because you're
think someone
complaining.
like Dr. Paul,
interrupting.
Dr. Phil Altman, why don't you come on and do an interview with Dr. Phil Altman? You refused.
I
He said it to you.
corresponded. I spent a month.
I know, I
corresponding
saw
with
the
Phil Altman
correspondence.
respectfully,
I saw
and
the
he
correspondence,
eventually
but
said
you
he
wouldn't
couldn't
do it.
correspond to me.
You won't come on with
I've got
someone
a
of your
pleasure.
standing.
Really, Paul's in
You
my
won't.
standing. Drop him in. Come on,
No,
Paul.
you'll come on with a playwright. Well, he's
Yeah.
there when he wants to.
Okay, Paul, tell me, why should Dazelle not get a protein-based vaccine? Go.
Then let's, before we do that, we have such a disconnect, and I don't think one of the reasons I didn't want to talk with you a few months ago is because I feel our positions are so far apart, and you cannot hear. We've got very different data sets, very different observations. We're seeing the world literally 180 degrees opposite.
Agree. Understood.
And so it's very hard to have a discussion. But when you use ad hominem attacks, like you're saying, Michael's observations and experience and the experience of people in the community are not valid because they don't have a PhD. That's not quite fair. I recognize you have a specific viewpoint from where you're watching this shit show, but I think you can admit that one of the most distressing things in the last 4 years has been how the medical profession has jettisoned informed consent, how the media and social media have blocked all messages of harm. Anything that could be seen to produce vaccine hesitancy has been removed from the public discourse. So people
are very scared of it. I agree.
And that has just fundamentally destroyed informed consent. It's removed the ability of people to make valid informed consent, and to every patient, as long in my 32 years of practice, at any stage, they could be ready to be rolled into the operating theatre. But if they turned around and said, "I've changed my mind, I don't want it," that was always good enough. Just saying, "I don't want it," has always been good enough in medical ethics and in our practice for someone to withdraw. And you've got to remember, we've been in an environment now the last 4 years where people have been bullied, and not just misinformed, not just malinformed, but literally, you're going to lose your job, you're going to lose your standing in the community, you're going to be attacked by lawfare. So, before you start talking about your paper versus my paper, you've got to acknowledge that we've come out of a very, and so from that point of view, I respect anyone's opinion if they say, "No, I don't want this treatment." they should be respected. And Dazzle is effectively being denied treatment, and all the people who refuse to take the shots over the last 3 years are effectively facing medical discrimination. And Dazzle is just an example of this medical discrimination. And then you've got to ask, well, even if it was based, even if the papers you're saying are in fact a reality, it's a major ethical breach that we're allowing this sort of discrimination to take place. And I know, you know, in your heart, you feel that, because and they're concerned about that.
Can I interrupt about a few things? So the first question I had was, I agree there's two questions: vaccine whether the vaccine's safe and effective. I know that's going to trigger your entire audience, but I'm going to put it out there. And the second one is, should you be able to discriminate on the basis of vaccine status? Separate questions. Which one should we address first? Well,
many people now don't believe in the safe or effective narrative.
Can I ask, Paul, I'm interested from your opinion, what evidence would you require to be able to use the language, this vaccine is safe and effective? Do you think Nicholas Petrovsky's vaccine, protein-based vaccine that he's developed in Australia and has successfully used in the Middle East, do you think that vaccine is safe and effective?
I don't think that we need any vaccines for
I disagree.
You've got a rapidly evolving respiratory pathogen. That's what you're asking.
Yes.
So there's this coronavirus. It's rapidly evolving. The whole approach of injecting in the arm anything for a rapidly evolving respiratory pathogen was always going to be obsolete by the time they'd actually manufactured.
That's why we haven't done it before. I agree, but it saved lives.
It hasn't worked, and it hasn't worked.
I disagree. It's worked. It's saved millions of lives.
Has it stopped people getting COVID?
Yes.
No, it hasn't. In fact, have you looked at the Cleveland Clinic study?
Yes.
Have you looked at the New South Wales health data?
Have you looked at the randomized controlled trial?
The more shots you get, the more COVID you get, the more vulnerable you are.
But let's think about that for a minute.
It's classic antibody-dependent enhancement. It was one of the things I warned the medical council about in 2021. One of the posts that they flagged with me, well, in fact, 3 of the 10 posts, were about antibody-dependent enhancement. It's a known phenomenon. It's happened with previous coronavirus vaccine attempts and other vaccines. And it means people actually become more vulnerable rather than
I'm familiar with the accusation, but I don't agree with the conclusion. Can I pin you back on this specifically? What would it take for you to get a vaccine that's safe and effective? And do you think Petrovsky's vaccine is safe and effective? What is your threshold for safety? What's your threshold for efficacy? Go.
I'm saying, well,
I can answer that. If the natural immunity can defeat the virus, why the and ivermectin can help, and hydrochloroquine, whatever that shit's called, can help, and natural products can help. Why the fuck do you need a vaccine? Can I ask you, Dan, how long have we been on the planet? Maybe 400,000 years we've been Homo sapiens? Would you agree? Since we left the caves?
What's your point?
Yes or no?
It's a distraction from trying to...
Let's say 400,000 years. We've gone through the plague. We've gone through
war.
Michael? We've gone through
You're
famine,
making a long playwright version.
Right now, if you get a baby born, right? You get a baby born. Are you saying that natural selection, evolution, or if you're a God person, creation, have sent this person to the planet, this human being, and this human being is incapable of surviving in this world unless Big Pharma, benevolent Big Pharma who loves us so much, Big Pharma fills our veins full of shit.
So you're a eugenicist, Michael. Is that what you are?
Can't survive.
So you're a eugenicist. Is that right? Survival of the fittest?
In towns in Africa, in countries in Africa with the same demographic as us, the same population.
No, they're much younger. That's false.
The vaccine,
they're much younger than us. Average age.
Ours.
They're not the same demographics.
We're 70% above the norm. You don't even acknowledge that. What
I acknowledge excess death. You know what the excess deaths are from? COVID. Let's go back to Paul.
It's been a maxim of science and immunology. The past infection.
This is irrelevant. Paul, tell me what would it take? What would it take?
past affection, natural immunity is how you get protection. It's the best protection.
Excuse me, Paul. Respectfully,
and when you look at,
answer the question.
When you look at how many people now have been exposed to COVID and therefore have had past infection, which is natural immunity, that is the best protection. This is partly what Michael was saying with Dazzle.
Can I ask the question, Paul? Does natural protection wane?
If we do the serum, yeah, it wanes less than any of the artificial injections, and there was a systematic review.
But it does wane, so you need to boost it.
It would be boosted naturally through exposure. You see,
you still haven't answered my original question. What would it take
where do you get immunity from? Where do you get immunity from? It doesn't come from inside the nasal compartment. It comes from, you get exposed to these pathogens in your nose.
You don't have to teach me biology, Paul. I'm a doctor.
You need secretory IgA.
I know this. I've been to medical
school.
You
don't get that by injecting any protein in the arm or mRNA.
If we can get an inhaled vaccine, excellent. But we don't have one.
There's always been some approach that involved in nose and mouth to produce mucosal immunity. None of these injections produce mucosal immunity. The sort of thing that natural immunity does, because you're inhaling it and you're presenting.
But it wanes.
Yes, but it wanes less than any other approach. It is much more robust. And this is what the system. And this is what this.
How quickly does it wane? Does it wane that you've got to take a booster every 6 months? Because I've had COVID once.
Every 6 months.
I have been around Australia. I have hugged literally thousands of people.
How often have you had tests?
I've had it once.
Anyway, let me go back to Paul.
I'm never sick. I've lost weight. I'm dreaming with health.
I'm pleased you're doing well. Paul, what would it take, Paul? What would it, Michael, what would it take?
My fact that I'm still healthy and I'm not sick and I haven't died, is that annoying?
You smoke and you're probably going to die of lung cancer, but that's your problem.
The facts are, mate, unvaccinated people aren't dying, and the vaccinated are. The vaccinated are dying. The
drinking and smoking guys get lung cancer, stomach cancer, and bladder cancer, and coronary disease.
Empty. You were lying to us. You were lying to us, and you were lying.
I'm not lying to you.
Hospital, knowing the hospitals were empty, pushing the vaccine. No one was dying of COVID in the hospitals.
What's wrong with you?
No one was dying. You were lying. You were lying to the people.
I looked after
patients who died. Would you like to live? Do no harm, and you were doing harm.
You're going to have a stroke,
Michael. You have broken your Hippocratic oath. You have broken your Hippocratic oath. You have one job: help people. Help people. You're so fucked up in the head and you're so fucking arrogant. You're actually attacking your own brother.
I'm
Chris
arrogant.
Neal,
You're sounding a bit arrogant now, Michael.
Screaming at him how he's killing
Holier
people.
than thou, Michael, going around the country saving people.
Mate.
You're not worthy.
We are
You're
not
saving the country.
COVID.
Thank you for your service.
Our people are dying because the mRNA vaccine.
Bullshit.
They're dying everywhere. They're too terrified to admit it.
Michael.
There's no such thing as long
Australia
COVID.
Last year.
It's vaccine injuries.
Oh,
this
did you hear that? No such thing as long COVID. Everybody with long COVID thinks they're being gaslit by Michael Gray Griffith.
You can't fix it by bullshitting.
You're bullshitting.
So
that's your job. You bullshit for a living.
There's a problem here. People are dying.
It's COVID. COVID is the problem. People are dying of COVID.
It's fucking COVID, mate. No one gives a shit. Why do you think no one's wearing a mask?
COVID wasn't even killing.
No one buys it anymore, brother.
Before the vaccine.
No one's wearing masks. No one buys it. No one's taking the booster because no one buys it. People aren't stupid. Well, maybe something.
Right, let's go back. I'm happy for either of you to answer this question.
More than half the countries studied in 2020, before there was a vaccine, where COVID was unopposed, had no rise or cause mortality. If you had such a
complete bullshit, that is an incorrect statement. Show me the data. I'm happy to read it. Would you like a reference? I can give you 20 references in 30 seconds.
Who made them up? Pfizer? Did Pfizer make them up? The same people who said it was
performance artist. This is not a scientist. This is a bullshit artist. You're a bullshit artist. You're a bullshit artist who's grifting off people.
Pfizer said it doesn't
you
stop
are the groping grifter, and that's why nobody has respect for you.
It doesn't
the
stop
groping
infection.
grifter.
Will you admit that
a smoker? Both of you are smokers. You get health advice from a smoker? What a prick.
Dan, we will drop you if you continue with your ad hominem attacks.
Freedom of speech.
No, I'm not. We're not attacking you personally. we're
Michael
not resorting to ad hominem attacks.
Michael is.
We are
Michael
trying.
started.
Yeah, but you started. But you
You're the
started.
problem.
But you started. And if you
Well,
want
we're
Michael
cardiologists. We have all these young people who need heart transplants because it's destroyed their hearts, and you're claiming there's nothing wrong. You're the
COVID
problem.
hearts.
You are the problem.
Let me ask both of you.
You are the problem.
What? Let
You're
me ask both of
absolutely
you.
blind. And one of the problems is
I'm
you've
not blind,
taken
I've
the
seen your
shit.
data.
Your kids have taken the shit. It's in them, and you realize you've seriously fucked up. Big Daddy is actually not Big Daddy. You're being fucked in the ass by Big Daddy, and you can't accept the fact. You've actually been violated, brother. But it's easier to attack
you've
us.
been down a rabbit hole, and you're too arrogant to admit that you're wrong, you idiot.
Ultimately, you can't handle the truth that you've been
can't handle the
fucked
truth
over.
that COVID kills. You can't handle the truth that you're wrong. You discourage people from getting vaccinations,
If COVID
and they
kills,
died
how
of
come the
COVID.
death rate before the rollout of the vaccine, the death rate went down? That's
Because
ABS
we had lockdowns,
statistics.
Michael. Look at Milan, look at New York, look at London. Do you know what the death rates were? 100-fold Australia's. And why? Because they didn't have the vaccine first. What would it take for you to say that a vaccine is safe and effective? What burden of proof do you have, Paul? You're a man of science, you're an anaesthetist. What would it take for you to say that a vaccine is safe and effective? What clinical trial would you require?
Well, I'd like a placebo-controlled trial.
There are four. There are 4 placebo-controlled trials.
All the childhood vaccines, none of them. I think there was one that had actually what we would consider a true placebo, an inert, non-active substance.
Excuse me, Paul. The COVID trials.
Dan, I'm trying to answer your question. I've had all the vaccines. When the medical council asked me, "Are you vaccinated?" I said, "Yeah, I'm fully vaccinated. I've had rabies, flu, Hep B, every vaccine that was required." The problem is that the last 4 years has allowed me to dive deeply into the law and the science around vaccines, and we haven't been given the full picture. And you're answering your question directly. Proper placebo-controlled studies of all vaccines, everything that's been injected. Now, in general, we're used to having the drugs that we give have proper placebo-controlled studies. When it comes to vaccines, this hasn't happened. And all you have to do is look at the testimony and the work of Aaron Siri, who interviewed. It's very clear that the whole,
it's not to me.
Whole edifice of the science on which vaccines, all vaccines are based, since the pharma companies were let off having legal liability, has not been built on solid ground. So that should answer your question. For very start, I would like to see independently reviewed, properly sized clinical trials with true placebos.
So we have 4 clinical trials with 100,000 participants, placebo-controlled trials, not just with Pfizer, Moderna, Novavax, Nicholas Petrovsky's vaccine.
For 2 months. For 2 months. At the moment, the 2 months.
They've got 6 months data.
Yeah, but they very quickly broke the trial and injected the control.
Why is that, Paul?
They contaminated their study. They prevented the ability to find long-term.
Have you ever been on an ethics committee, Paul? Imagine being on the ethics committee where you said, we've just demonstrated that this vaccine reduces mortality. Can we do another placebo-controlled trial out to 12 months? And they would say no, because you're avoiding a medication that works.
How much did it reduce mortality? It didn't reduce mortality.
I'm happy to save one life, Paul. I'm happy to save one life.
Okay. No, but this is where your delusion is starting to shine through. Because
my delusion.
Yeah, because when you talk about relative efficacy versus absolute, even in the original trial, you know, they were talking 90%, 95% effective. But when you look in the absolute effectiveness,
yes,
it was 0.8.
If you translate,
it was less than 1%.
Correct.
And you're saying it saves lives. More people died in the vaccinated group than the untreated group in these original trials you're talking about. There was already
about the bigger trials.
There was already a signal of harm in the original Pfizer trial that you're relying on. And it wasn't saving lives all-cause mortality was greater in the treated group, and it's misrepresented grossly, the effectiveness, because they were saying 90, 95%, 99%.
Let's discuss the absolute benefit. Sure, I think it's important.
And the absolute benefit was a fraction of a percent. So
do you agree that the absolute benefit exists?
So it's totally misrepresented.
Do
you agree that the absolute benefit exists?
I believe that the fraud
we actually have.
Part of the fraud was that for the first 2 weeks, they declared that you were still unvaccinated. So if you got dead at 13 days, you were an unvaccinated death.
But they monitored those deaths, Paul, and they didn't exist.
This produced, they miscategorized vaccinated
Paul,
and unvaccinated because they said,
let's clarify.
So that produces a skew where even Saline would have produced
it's a bias. I agree. Not going to argue. I agree.
So this is the concern. You see, we're dealing with fraud. We're dealing with misinformation.
Not fraud, bias. Not misinformation, bias. Can I ask you a question? So do you agree there's an absolute risk? Is there an absolute risk of COVID vaccination reduction? Do you get a reduction in mortality with COVID vaccination in a high-risk population? Yes or no? Even if the benefit is small. Paul.
I don't think it shows that. I don't think it shows that.
I think it does. You just told me that it was a relative risk compared to an absolute risk.
I
the
said
absolute
that
risk is reduced.
Even in the original study, more people died in the treatment group than in
the subsequent studies. The original studies were looking at whether or not it reduced infections, so the numbers were too small. In the big enough trials where there was a change in mortality, there's a clear reduction in total mortality consistently.
Why don't you study us? You have a huge control group in the country who have not taken the vaccine.
And they do worse. They
people,
die more.
And you take the unvaccinated people.
Speak to an epidemiologist. They've done the study. Look, you're telling me that I go personal. Listen to this.
I mean, if you 1,500 people, not
they
one of them,
Michael Gray Griffith.
Not
they
one of them has been approached by you guys to ask questions. You're full of shit, Dan. Stop fucking lying,
you're asking me if I'm doing personal attack. He's the wanker doing personal attacks because he has no science. Because he's he's an ignorant prick and can't talk science. You and I can talk science.
Like the Nazis did with the Jews. That's exactly what you are, brother. That's
you're the eugenicist. You're the eugenicist, survival of the fittest.
Hate anyone who challenges the narrative.
I didn't call you a Nazi.
That's what you're doing.
Maybe not a Nazi.
You're blind to your bias, brother. You're blind.
You're blind to your bias. You're blind to your bias. You're blind to your bias. You're completely blind.
Come and study us. Spend $10 million and do a research on every unvaccinated person.
I have.
How many times have you had COVID? How many times have you had myocarditis? How many times have you had, I don't know, anything? Study us. You could. We're there. We're here. Come and study us. We want to be studied.
Dan, your faith.
Get us in, doctor. You could do it yourself. You're probably rich enough. You probably made enough money. You do your own private study. Do a research on us.
It's being done. Are you listening? You're not listening. Hello. Hello. Are you listening? Okay. Are you listening?
10,000 of your group, and
would you like to know? We know the vaccinated are healthier. We've done it.
Why won't you do it?
It's already been done, you ignorant prick. It's already been done. Yes, it has. I'll send you the references. It's been done.
Pfizer admitted it doesn't stop the spread of infection. Yes or no?
False. Pfizer said no, it's not a yes or no question.
Yes or no?
It's not a yes or no question. The Pfizer study was not designed to demonstrate a reduction in transmission. It was designed to do clinical infections. So it wasn't designed to do that. Have scientists...
You didn't know then. So you didn't know whether it stopped transmission or not. Yes or no?
Correct. No, it wasn't scientifically proven, but it made sense. But it made sense. But it made sense.
But you convinced all the children to take it because you said it would stop them killing their grandmothers.
I believe that it did reduce transmission. It's just hard to prove.
No, you believe it, but you didn't do a study. You just believe it. That's faith, right?
It took time.
That's faith, right?
It's the hardest study to do.
But when it came out, you didn't have time.
It's logic and science. You don't have either.
No, it's faith. It's faith.
No, it's logic.
Are you a scientist or not?
Yeah, you a scientist? Clearly not. You're not a scientist.
No, you are.
Have a PhD.
Does a scientist work on belief?
If you shut up, you can learn something from a scientist.
Work on facts. Faith or facts? What do you believe in?
We take facts, but if the facts aren't available, we
extrapolate.
It's facts, and we extrapolate when we don't have facts. We didn't have the facts.
You knew them, but they knew. So Pfizer knew they hadn't seen whether it stopped transmission. Very early on, they must have learned that it didn't stop transmission.
No, that's different. You're misquoting them. So they said we haven't
I'm not
done a study.
misquoting. I'm just asking. When do you think they realised it doesn't stop transmission?
It does stop transmission. It will not stop. It reduces transmission. They said they didn't have a study. No, you're misquoting them. No, it reduces transmission. It doesn't stop transmission. When you gave it to
children, and you said it was safe and effective, do you know the first person to die of the Pfizer vaccine was a 46-year-old woman who died? We've got this in documents, Freedom of Information documents. She died before it was even rolled out. Before it was even rolled out, they already had a death in this country. That's called facts. We have that.
How many people are saved by the vaccine?
Well documented.
How many people are saved by the vaccine? When they said
it was safe and effective, they already knew they had a death.
And how many did they save? There's one death. How many saves?
You knew that children didn't die of COVID. You knew.
We were learning. We didn't know.
Your doctors said children aren't at risk from COVID. They can pass it on, but
died in America with COVID under the age of 20.
They're not at risk, though, but they said it here. The doctors said it even. Everyone, they said it.
They didn't use that language because they're not so ignorant. They said they're less likely to die. They didn't say didn't. They said less likely to die.
Basically lost his registration after being 30 years as an emergency anesthetist. He lost his registration because he said, if you give it to the children and one children dies, the risk benefit is already gone.
Can I ask Paul, how many children have died internationally of COVID, Paul?
Yeah, internationally here, mate. Here, mate, they haven't. They're dying of the vaccine. I know.
Paul, how many people have died? How many people have died internationally of the vaccine, Paul?
Internationally doesn't care about it. Right here,
he doesn't care about children. He doesn't care about the death of children.
Oh, he doesn't care about children. You're the ones who vaccinated all the kids with something they didn't need. Their natural immunity to come on. You injected them with an experimental mRNA vaccine, which is a gene therapy. You mad prick. It actually's got DNA in. They've proven it now. One of your scientists proved it. He got it to prove us wrong. Ended up proving us right. It changes their DNA. Their DNA. For a cold. No, you do that all you want just because you don't like the truth. That's it. It changes the DNA.
Let me tell you the
for
truth.
A fucking cold.
Bullshit. This is all just bullshit, conspiratorial, crazy thinking. I'm not going to debate.
It's the truth. It's your scientists, not ours.
No, it's your scientists. It's not ours.
It's your scientists,
not ours. But Dan, you don't. One of the things that I realised in the
cherry pick COVID
was that the journals. I remember, like in anaesthetics, intravenous fluids was a big thing, colloids was a big thing, and we over the last few decades we changed our practices with reverse to fluid resuscitation.
Yes, I've lived through it.
Partly based on the work of this guy called Bolt, who completely flooded the journals. He was dominant, and then we later discovered that he was a fraudster. He was making up his data. And the work of Ioannidis and others, and Peter Doshi points to it, and others, that our journal system it reports certain things that pharma wants, and it doesn't report negative.
I agree. There's bias and corruption. I agree.
In fact, it's so bad that our studies no longer have repeatability in over half. So we have a major crisis. So you're standing on a bedrock and saying, look, the peer-reviewed literature shows.
What options do we have, Paul? What options do we have?
Well, you have to get
the best that we've got.
You have to get smart. No, you need to get smart if you're fighting.
The New England Journal isn't the best option I have at the moment for information. The New England Journal of Medicine, where top experts around the world review papers. I still trust the New England Journal of Medicine, Paul. I don't know why you don't.
Well, that's fine. I think you've got to be discerning.
I am. I read articles in the New England Journal of Medicine written by experts around the world, which have been validated by peer review from other experts around the world. The New England Journal of Medicine, the British Medical Journal.
So what I'm saying is there's a lot of contamination by money and pharma.
Agreed.
And the peer review process takes years.
Not always.
When you're in a crisis, when you're in a fast-moving situation, this is not the way to pass.
It is. Oh, no, it completely is, because people are dying. That was the one. But can I just clarify, Paul, you still haven't answered my question. How many children internationally have died of COVID? You've repeatedly come online internationally. You've repeatedly coming online and said the risk of children is small, but it's not zero. Thousands of kids have died internationally from COVID.
There were whole countries that didn't log a death to a child.
Well, it's probably higher.
So it's time.
So Paul, how many people have died?
These are developed countries like Germany.
Why don't you answer the question?
So the number is approaching zero. Is the point?
No, it's thousands, Paul. It's thousands.
It's approaching zero. It's approaching zero.
Why can't you say thousands out loud, Paul? How many children have died
Why can't you say
internationally?
bullshit? Because it's not the truth, brother. Why don't you say how many people died of the vaccine?
I can tell you how many in Australia.
Documented cases of injured and dead people that died of the vaccine. They can't even get, the coroners don't even do autopsies. They won't do autopsies.
Paul, can you explain to Michael what the nocebo effect is? And the Sampson study recently reviewed about the effects of statins and side effects of statin. Go and explain it to Michael, because he trusts you, he won't trust me. Explain the nocebo effect.
Yeah, well, it's the opposite of the placebo effect. So instead of a treatment or a pill, a sugar pill, you say this is a powerful painkiller and it relieves your pain. And nocebo is where you say you give a pill and it causes pain. Sugar pills.
You're saying they're manifesting it. They're taking the vaccine. They're giving themselves myocarditis because people like me say it'll give it to you. That's what you're actually saying to me.
No.
That's what you're actually saying. No. Let me get this clear.
You're interrupting.
All these people have myocarditis who have all these injuries.
That's not what I'm saying.
Let
me explain.
Basically, you're saying that I'm pointing the blame.
You're bullshitting again.
You're going to die. That's what you just said.
Let me explain.
No, that's what you don't know.
Why don't you let me clarify? Are you scared of the truth, Michael? Just shut up for a second. I know you like to talk a lot because you're a dickhead.
I'm not
you need to listen and learn. Listen and learn.
Very clear.
I'll give you 30 seconds, then I'll have my turn.
We're the one killing people because we're saying it could hurt you, and people are getting, oh my God, I'm manifesting. Michael said it could give me myocarditis, and now I've got myocarditis. So I'm the actual problem. I'm worse than COVID. Just because I get people who've injured and I put it up. I'm the problem. You mad cunt. That is fucking insane. You're a doctor. What did you do your PhD with? A fucking crayon? You fucking mad cunt. I can't believe you just said that. You just disrespected everyone who's out there suffering. I interviewed a guy the other day. This is what he did. He went in and wanted a varicose veins room.
I've seen the interview and I can discuss it, but let me interrupt.
was his name.
I've seen it. I've watched it, and I know exactly.
Thank you. I'm glad you're a big fan.
No, just pause for a second. Pause. Time out from your rant. Are you quite finished swearing at me? Are you quite finished?
You're the one who's accusing me of killing people, brother.
I am. Are you quite finished? Let me explain. Okay. The vaccine causes anaphylaxis. The vaccine causes thrombosis. The AstraZeneca killed people with strokes and heart attacks, so we pulled it because it was unsafe. The mRNA vaccines cause pericarditis, myocarditis at a rate of about 1 in 10,000. 1 in 10,000. There are sore arms, there are fevers. Show me better data than mine. Stop talking for a minute, Mike. I know it's hard to learn, but these are the well-recognized facts. So if you're saying I'm telling people they're faking their myocarditis,
no.
Myocarditis is real and it's vaccine-related.
Well-recognized facts by who?
You're interrupting. You're interrupting because you have no valid arguments. You're interrupting. Stop for a second.
Well, you're talking shit, brother. I can only take so much. What
so
data?
Paul,
I need to know who it is because we've got a load of other doctors out there.
Who's the wanker who talks over top of people when he has no valid argument?
Dr. Phil Altman knows what he's talking about or not.
Dr. Philip Altman is a conspiratorial nutbag. He's an idiot.
Oh, he's a nutbag. So he used to work with vaccines. That was his job. He was approving this. So he did all that, but now he's a nut job.
He's fallen down a conspiratorial rabbit hole, and he's now a complete QAnon nutbag.
Oh, really?
Dr. David, you're aware of the studies where they the Mansugan.
How many children died?
I'll ask you a question. The Mansugan paper out of Thailand, where they were looking at teenage boys getting their second shot, and they looked at troponin, they looked at ECG, they looked at all sorts of things.
MRIs have been done too.
And it wasn't 1 in 10,000. They were seeing cardiovascular effects, serious cardiovascular effects in 2.
You mean a troponin?
Not just troponin. There was blood pressure. There was ECG changes. It was
mainly troponin. I've read the study.
There were cardiovascular side effects in 2%, not 1 in 10,000.
There was a change in troponin in 2%.
Christian Mueller's team also found
I've read the study.
in adolescents, not
Yep,
1 in 10,000.
Yep.
Now you're aware of the study where they looked at the glucose uptake, radio-labeled glucose.
The PET scan, yes.
PET scan data.
Yep,
Now,
read it.
Normally, hearts don't light up on PET
I
scan.
know, Paul. I'm a cardiologist. I know about cardiac PET.
After the shot, they're
Yes.
magically lighting up. They're becoming dark. They've changed their metabolism. Peter
I
McCullough,
understand what
who's a
PET scans are.
cardiologist,
I order
calls
PET
that-
scans, Paul.
calls that an injury pattern. It's an
Call it whatever he likes. Let's go back to the first question,
Do
Paul.
you know why the heart? Do you know what? Don't you think that's noteworthy that the heart's?
I'm telling you, the vaccines cause myocarditis. Yes, no question. You
But this
screamed at me and
is
said, "Why
nearly
don't?"
everyone. These changes are not 1 in 10,000. They found it patient after patient after patient. It's the norm.
First time you came on, you said it didn't.
So
First time you came on,
cause
you said it
myocarditis.
didn't.
Novavax
First time
doesn't
you
cause
came on, you
myocarditis.
said it didn't, and you
Tell me
said
the
that
quote.
myocarditis was common. It was everywhere. It was very common. That's what you said. You said it wasn't
Viral
rare.
myocarditis is very common.
And there's been no
Vaccine
increase.
myocarditis is
That's
rare.
what you said. Do you want me to bring back the
Let me-
interview?
Yeah,
and show
go right
you?
ahead. Go right
That's
ahead.
all right.
Have you
Vaccine
suddenly
myocarditis
I'm
changed?
is
consistent.
not
Go right
common.
ahead. Bring it up.
Dan,
Pardon me?
Vaccine myocarditis is not common. The paper by Tuvali in Israel, very, very large sample size, done before the vaccines. I look
Depends
at it.
how hard you look.
It's
Troponin elevation is
completely-
common.
It completely invalidates your last comment.
Okay, Paul, tell me how often is
myocarditis-
troponin elevated in COVID, Paul? How often is troponin elevated in severe COVID infection, Paul?
I'm not saying that people in
Almost always.
Yeah, I'm
I
not
treat
saying
them.
that. I'm not saying that.
You still haven't answered my question from 20 minutes ago, Paul.
In sick
You're not
patients
asking
in
many
intensive
questions
care.
yourself.
But this is, you see, I'm painting a very different story. You're saying it's 1 in 10,000. I'm
In the
saying
whole population, higher in young men.
I'm saying look at Mansugan, look at Christian Mueller's work, look at the changes.
I have.
Look at the changes in cardiac metabolism, which
I have.
And can you explain why that's happened? Why
It's
are these
very
hearts?
interesting. They think it's an interferon
Can you explain
antibody.
why?
Yes.
Have you got a theory?
There are a few theories, and the one I've read most recently is that there are auto antibodies set up against TNF. It's very interesting. But let me explain.
So you've got an auto, and remember, you've injected nanoparticles in millions of people, billions of people,
Save their lives.
which converts,
Prevented COVID and saved lives.
which converts the.
What about the Amish?
No. Wait. In itself, what it does.
The Amish have done terribly. They died.
Oh, fuck off. They haven't. They've done very well.
I'll send you a
They have
paper.
no,
They did very
they have
badly.
no
I'll send you a
Asperger's.
paper.
They have no autism. They
Oh,
have
here we
no
go.
eczema. have
Does
none of
Michael
this.
want to say whether Paul, does the MMRI, does the measles mumps vaccine cause autism, Paul?
Can we just finish this thought? Okay. In itself, what these shots do is you're converting self into non-self. That's how you develop an immune attack.
They're making spike protein. Yep.
Yeah, but it has the effect for the immune system to go
To make antibodies against the spike protein. Yep.
Attack. So you're in fact you're creating an autoimmune condition in people who
not autoimmune, against the spike protein. We don't have spike protein, so we're
but once you've injected this foreign thing and it converts your cells from self, which is recognized as part of the body, to non-self, which is the last attack, you in effect produce an autoimmune attack, and that autoimmune attack is occurring everywhere, including the heart. It's the recruitment of the white blood cells that they're finding, the killer lymphocytes that they're finding in the autopsies of the people who have died of myocarditis.
So, Paul, what's your position of protein-based vaccines, Paul?
I've already explained. I think that my trust.
Would you encourage old people to have Novavax?
I would encourage anyone to have any vaccine that hasn't been studied independently with proper placebo controls.
You live in the real world, Paul.
I answered that question. If show me one vaccine that has been studied properly and independently with placebo controls, and then I'll come back to you.
Do you think Nicholas Petrovsky's taking vaccine?
Novavax has concerns. It may be a form of transfaction by by stealth because
I disagree.
Why are you pushing Novavax?
It contains saponins, and it may contain the same contaminants that we're worried about with the other vaccines. So, in effect, you have a transfection agent by subterfuge. I have concerns
disagree.
about that.
You're allowed to be concerned.
I know you disagree, but I have read and seen, and these saponins can act a bit like the lipid nanoparticles. And if there is any chance of the contamination issues that have plagued the production of the mRNA vaccines, it's not necessarily benign, safe, or completely independent of the same danger.
So again, what about Nicholas Petrovsky's vaccine? Do you believe his science?
Why are you pushing that so much? What's wrong with Pfizer?
Yes, but I've already explained that the ideal vaccine, in my mind, is one which is presented to the immune system through the oral route. It'll probably be a nasal spray that it has to develop.
That would be nice, but we don't have it. Of the ones we have available currently,
so I don't think any of them. So this is the point. I don't think any of them have a role. I think if you
it's not a mainstream view, Paul.
If you check, I know, but if you have, if you check the sera, if you look at the seroconversion rates in our population, everyone has been exposed to it through the respiratory route and has developed natural immunity. Now you're saying it doesn't last forever, sure, but it lasts longer than any of these other approaches. Whether you're talking.
So do you think we should all try and get COVID every 6 months, Paul, to boost our natural immunity?
We will be.
Well, we did that with the flu. We did that with the cold.
And many people died. No, people die of the flu every year.
We did survive it. About 1,700 people a year die of the flu.
They die
on a bad year.
They die
on a bad year. No, in 2020, no one died of the flu. Go to the ABS.
Because we're all at home.
2020, zero. Because it went to Bali. It took the day off. It said, "Hey, COVID, you take over. I'm having a holiday." There's the thing is, there's lies everywhere. Do you think Big Pfizer is sitting there going, how can we help the world? We don't want to make money. We just want to produce and save the planet. We don't care. We just love it.
I think I'm delighted that interests aligned.
I know we fucked up with statins. I know we fucked up with blood pressure. I know that basically 4 out of every 10 drugs get pulled because they injure people. But we sometimes make mistakes. But look, we've got a vaccine now. We can make really, really quickly and make trillions of dollars, and with no liability. No one can get us. Even if you go, yep, you died of the vaccine, and guess what? There's fuck all you can do about it. And so this is this, and so you just trust. Because I'll tell you this, right? You say you don't believe in conspiracy theories, right? Now the government looks after millions of people, right? Now, you're saying that they never lie. They're completely transparent.
They lie all the time.
I'm sorry. What did you say?
Politicians lie, yep.
Politicians lie. Do you think maybe they might just be lying about this a little bit? Do you think it's a possibility?
Yes.
Because most of us are parents and you've got kids, and I bet you lie to them all the time when they were growing up.
Yep.
There you go. That's a conspiracy theory. You're absolutely lie. Humans lie. There was a fucking shit ton of money to make out of here, and there's money's been made hand over fist, and they pushed this out. They've shot people with rubber bullets who didn't take it. They've pushed over grandmothers.
They weren't shooting you for not taking it. They were shooting you for civil disobedience.
Grandmothers in the street because they were going.
Not because they weren't unvaccinated, because of civil disobedience.
That's what they were there. I was at the protest, brother.
Yes,
they were there
but you don't get shot for not having a vaccine.
Something they didn't want to take. They wanted.
And they might have been spreading COVID.
They wanted to know what's in it. Where are the tests? Why should I take it? Maybe I won't.
And the Black Lives Matter people didn't get shot at for protesting. It was never about COVID.
There's a guy that died yesterday in Adelaide, I think, your town, for waiting 10 hours for an ambulance. I've interviewed paramedics all over South Australia and Victoria who want to come back. Hospitals and nurses who now don't want to come back because of APRA. They're waiting there. There's no staff shortage. You just won't hire them because they won't take your shit. I'd have them all back today. And so, I'm just a playwright. But these are nurses with 40, 50 years experience who don't want to take it. I'd love them back in the system.
I'd love them back.
Yeah, you would, but you're a part of the system that says no.
I'm working towards getting the band-aids lifted.
Oh, well, congratulations. You're still 4 years into it. You're not doing this. You've said no. I'm not saying you're
From
a
the-
bad
from-
man.
from about
Bad
a year
man.
in.
I'm not saying you're a bad man, Dan. I'm
You
not.
called me a fucking idiot.
But there's
and
an
a
issue
moron
here.
and
You're a good man. You're a good doctor. Paul is a good doctor. Let's
I'm not
pretend
so
just for
sure.
a moment. Let's pretend just for a moment that we're all good people and we
Okay.
have a different point of view. But
Yes.
we have the wealth to save Dazzle. We have the expertise to save Dazzle.
Let's
She
do
was
it.
going to go to India. And when we're in India,
It was
there's a
never
woman
gonna
over there
happen.
there's a woman in India getting a transplant now, or is on the list there now, because the freedom movement's helped to raise the money. In India, the doctors said they are baffled as to why the doctors here will not give Dazzle a lung transplant because of the vaccine. They can't conceive it. Are you
I
saying
understand the
Indians are
ethical
just
friction
shit
is
doctors?
difficult.
Are they doing like, do you think maybe they're doing it with, I don't know, what do you call those? They're doing it with medicine or magic or something. They're not actually proper doctors. They're brilliant doctors. And they can't see it. You are going
Happy
to
to bring it
kill
back to
this
the
girl
zone.
for red tape. And as soon as she dies, you're going to knock on her door and go, can we take her organs? It's to save lives, but not unvaccinated lives, just lives. That is fucking evil, brother.
Would you like me to
That is
explain
evil.
why?
And you are
Would you like me
now
to
in
explain it?
evil. The road to hell is paved with good intentions. And that's what you're on. You can't see it, but that's where you're on.
Let me
You've
explain it,
taken
please.
away freedom of choice. If you don't take the vaccine, you lose your job. You're kicked out of your family. People absolutely fear being ostracized more than anything else. That is where the fear came from. Not fear of COVID, fear of being ostracized, pushed by people like you. Even if you thought you were doing well, you have destroyed the moral fabric of our country, and you're sitting there thinking you're on the right side of history, and you're not. And I can prove you're not.
Yeah,
Go
yeah.
out to
I
trying
can
to get
prove you're
everyone
not.
to wear masks. No one's wearing masks. Maybe
Before I
one
finish?
in 1,000 wearing masks, because people now are over it. They can
And
see
people
through
are not
it.
lining up to
People
get the
are taking
shots either.
No,
They're
they're
not,
not.
they're
Even
not
the
coming back.
Crown.
They're not
I've
coming
even
back
got
to their
dogs
sixth.
with me.
They're not coming back to their sixth, seventh, eighth shots.
They're
Dan.
not. 4
I've
out
had
of
it.
5
My
aren't
mum's had it.
taking
My
it.
Yeah,
Not
patients
yeah,
with
yeah.
me.
There's a
Because
tiny
people
number,
smell
but you've lost.
bullshit.
You've lost that because people,
You've lost it.
the public are not lining up for their fifth, sixth,
Partly
seventh.
because Omicron's not as nasty as Delta.
It
It's
doesn't.
not as severe.
Oh, then what's the problem? Then if
The
it's not,
problem
if
is
it's
that
not
old,
that
frail people
dangerous,
die and
if it's not
transplant
that dangerous,
recipients
then
die.
let Dazzle have the operation.
Okay,
You
can I
just said it
explain?
yourself. It's not as dangerous. You just said that with your words. You want me to replay it?
Omicron is not as dangerous as Delta. I'll
Yeah,
say it
you
as often
just
as you
said it.
like. Yeah, there you go.
Yeah,
Now,
so
but
then
it's still
so
dangerous. But
why is the
listen,
problem? Why is the
because
problem?
So,
you're
Dan,
asking me the
Dazzle,
question, I'll answer it.
your
You're
doctor
answering me the
Dan,
said
question, I'll answer
have
it.
you
Dazzle is a
seen
danger
the
to the
excess
hospital.
You
mortality?
asked me the question,
you
I'll
seen the
answer it.
excess
You asked me to
mortality?
answer the
Dazzle,
question. You asked
the
me the
doctor-
question. What's the problem? I'll tell you.
Dan,
The
have you
answer
seen
is
the
this.
excess mortality?
Yes, that's another discussion. Wait a second. Dazzle is not getting a transplant because specialist transplant physicians know that if you have a lung transplant and you catch COVID on immunosuppression, you very commonly die. They're trying to protect her. It's not a discrimination case. It's
understand that,
best practice.
but
It's
there's
best
other
practice.
peer-reviewed studies coming out showing
What
the
would you
opposite.
say? What would you
Right.
say if somebody said, I would like a lung transplant, but I've got a philosophical objection to immunosuppression. So give me a lung transplant and I'll just not take the immunosuppressants afterwards and I'll get rejection.
It's
You
false.
can't.
It's false because you're touting a therapy that doesn't have a basis.
It has a basis. Randomized clinical trials show it reduces death and hospitalization.
It hasn't. It hasn't.
It has randomized clinical
It
trials.
has it.
No,
You're
I mean,
lying,
look,
Dan.
look
When
out
you're
the
in the
window,
hospital,
Dan.
you can
Dan,
see the
look out
evidence,
the
brother.
window.
How
Look
do you
out
go
the
through
window.
your surgery like
All
this?
those millions vaccinated. How many have now had COVID?
Paul, let me be
All of
very
them.
clear.
It
Listen, let me be very clear.
It hasn't done anything to prevent infection, and
No,
then
I
to a
didn't say.
third, and then
How can you
the
tell?
whole and then in the period of totalitarianism and lies and coercion and fraud, you're now asking us to trust you and
Yes.
trust the journals,
Yes.
and I'm afraid the trust is gone.
That's a separate issue. So let's go back to Dazzle for a second.
It's not a separate issue. It's a core issue, Dan. The lack of trust is.
So how do we get her to trust her doctors again?
How do you get?
Well, you start telling the truth and admit that
We
people
are.
have been injured by the vaccine.
No
Admit it.
SIBO
Because you're a
effect. Let's go back.
cardiologist. You've seen it. You've seen these young men. You must be
Yes.
working with these young men
I am.
who have been injured by the vax.
1 in 10,000. They're
Right,
rare.
and how many
I've
of
seen-
them? Yeah, 1 in 10,000. But how many could have died of the COVID? Those young men, 0. So that one
higher
is
than 1 in
also
10,000
out
in
of it.
Delta.
Oh fuck! You know it.
That's
Stop.
not fine.
That's how you fix it, mate. You actually go. You know what? There was a pandemic. We raced this. You had some really good points. We had to take it because what if all the doctors got sick and died? There'd be no one.
Damn right.
Excellent point. So
That's
you
why
did
there were
what you had to
mandates
do
early
at
on.
the time. But what's happened is there is something seriously wrong with this shit, and people know it. Everyone knows it, and we don't need to know everyone because we can see it. We got the death
Nocebo
rate,
effect.
everything. It's time to realize, okay, we rushed it out, but there's some serious problems with it. They got the Florida health minister is trying to actually prevent it from being put out. The Florida health minister.
There
is
are
actually
lots
trying
of
to
conspiratorial thinkers around the world.
Nocebo effect is BS. Look at the autopsy. It's bullshit. Look at the Hulsher paper where they did
the Samson trial of statin and side effects.
hold on. They did look at the work of Arnie Burkhardt in Germany.
I have.
The American pathologist. Okay, it's not nocebo when you can do an autopsy, stain the slides, find the spike protein being expressed, and see the immunological attack that we've been describing. That is far more common than.
So, Paul, why did the placebo-controlled trials show reductions in hospitalizations and death? It's either the whole system is horribly corrupted by Bill Gates and the World Economic Forum and the Khazarian Mafia and the Communist China's come to get you, or the placebo-controlled trials showed a reduction in mortality and death, and we should follow them to reduce death. There are COVID complications.
I dispute that. Like I say, when you look
then
at
you're in conspiratorial la la land, and we can't.
No, I can just add. I just added the number of deaths in the treatment group, and those who were not treated, and there are more deaths in the treatment group, and you're still alleging.
So have you
it
changed
saved
your mind?
Lives. It didn't save lives from the get-go. It's been poisoned.
You're misquoting me, Michael. You're confused.
It's been
No, this is someone here who watched the show. You were pushing Pfizer like crazy. Now you haven't mentioned it.
I am delighted with Pfizer. I had Pfizer. My kids have had Pfizer. I'm a fan of Pfizer, but I know it triggers your audience.
Why are you bothering with Novavax? What's the point?
Because I know your audience is psycho-paranoid about mRNA vaccine complications. So I thought let's avoid that complication. I want to help Dazzle get a transplant, and we're not going to help Dazzle get a transplant by arguing about the merits of mRNA vaccines. We're going to get Dazzle a transplant by giving her a series of Novavax, getting her to actually go to an appointment with a transplant physician. How are you going to get a lung transplant if they're refusing to go to their transplant appointments? When did she last see a transplant physician? She's seen a playwright, she's seen an anaesthetist, she's seen a GP. When did she last see a transplant physician to get back on the list? You're saying they're refusing a treatment, but they haven't gone to the appointments, Michael. How's she going to get a transplant if they don't talk to a transplant physician? Ask her.
I'm speaking for them.
They need to go to the appointments. They need to go to a transplant.
At the moment they can't, because the only thing that's been offered is palliative care. Sometimes 2 or 3 times a day. Now, I've been in there. I went to Sydney to say goodbye to her because Josh said the hospital's come in and said she could go tomorrow, she'd go the next day. So I went up just to say goodbye. When I got there, she's playing Jenga. She's full of life. She's painting. She's doing this. She's not on the edge of death at all. So why is the hospital offering her morphine? Why? She's not in any pain at all.
I don't know any of the clinical circumstances. So how do we help her trust her doctors and get her back on a transplant list?
Offering her palliative care 2-3 times a day, and she's full of life.
Did she ask for it?
No, she hasn't asked for it.
People.
What she said was they gave her a thing. What would you have? Die naturally, palliative care. And she said, I'd rather have the transplant and die on the operating theatre fighting to live. 2 or 3
she's still
times
interested in the transplant.
She died and she's come back. She's earned the right. The doctor said, if you stay in hospital unvaccinated, you're a danger to everyone in the hospital. She's been in hospital for 3 years and she hasn't been vaccinated, and there hasn't been a problem. The doctors and medicals that come in adore her. I've been sitting there watching. And if she suddenly said, I want to take the vaccine, great. Why don't you do something different? Why don't you go up there, get this great vaccine, pour it down the sink and go, she's had it. Let's move on. There's a compromise. Is it really going to destroy the world?
Because when she has her transplant and she's on immunosuppression, if she catches COVID, she may die. And we can prevent that with a vaccine that works.
Well, she's going to die anyway, so maybe give her that chance. Maybe
It's her
give her that
call.
chance.
But I think it's important that she gets the information to know that the risk of vaccination is this big and the risk of COVID with a transplant with immunosuppression is this big.
She's had all that.
And if we had sane public health, we would have, first thing we would have done is corrected vitamin D deficiency.
Can I interrupt, Paul? That's a distraction. What do you think is Dazzle's absolute risk from a COVID vaccine in percentage terms of dying or serious illness? Paul, as a doctor, what do you think her risk of a Novavax is in absolute terms? What percentage risk? You've staked your career on this. You should know all about COVID vaccines. What is her absolute risk of a COVID vaccine and Novavax, a protein-based vaccine? You've chosen to chuck in your career about children's risk of COVID and COVID vaccines. What's her risk of the vaccine? In my book, it's about 1 in 10,000 of a serious risk of myocarditis and a risk of anaphylaxis, which is minuscule, about 1 in 10,000. What's her risk of not getting a transplant? Risk of death is 100%. So why not take a gamble on a Novavax, give herself a chance of a transplant? Why is she so pig-headed about not wanting to give herself the best chance?
Do you know, it's about human dignity, Dan. It gets back to this informed consent.
But she still wants the transplant.
Yeah, but she doesn't want the COVID vaccine.
My teenager doesn't want to stop.
This was the breaking point for me, Dan. The question of, do I have the right to be in this body in this time and actually say no to a therapy that the government is pushing?
Entirely her call, but she needs the information.
I'm talking about basic ethics here. I mean, your point may be right that in absolute numbers, from what we know.
So who's telling her that, Paul? How does she get that message?
The people who are dying are generally older people.
Yes. And transplant people and people with respiratory failure. Young cystic fibrosis kids with respiratory failure.
I also went to that about vitamin. The reason I talk about vitamin D and ivermectin and hydroxychloroquine and gargles and nose drops is that
why don't you do both?
Is that there is you should
so she should have a vaccine.
Vaccines are mute when you realize that you can treat and avoid the serious consequences.
Why not do both?
Well, but
the vaccines aren't 100%.
And neither is treatment.
Thank you.
But
never said they were.
But the point is that once you recognise that it can be treated,
no, they're the best thing. They're the best chance you got. Vaccines don't prevent all illness; they reduce their risk.
Natural immunity is the best thing we've got.
Natural immunity is good if you don't die first. In order to get natural immunity, you need to have COVID. And some people,
there's too many of us alive. We haven't died,
people have died of COVID.
How many children have died internationally of COVID, Paul? You're avoiding the question.
Why do you say internationally?
How many people?
How
many people in America?
Why
because we're so lucky. Because we were lucky to get the vaccine.
Oh, we're lucky. Yeah, but how many of our children have died of the vaccine?
I don't think there's any on record. How many child deaths confirmed of vaccine?
There's 9. There's 9 on record. We're getting the ABS things. We've got a freedom of information.
Okay, bring it to me and I'll talk.
And that's coming out. 9. So 0 died. No, don't, Dad. You've got 9 that have died and 0 that died of COVID. So once that comes out, we've got it. Sharon Cousins is coming on.
When you give it to me, I'm happy to discuss it. But I don't believe it.
And if you prove it, what does that change anything? Or do you think those 9 were unlucky?
Depends how many died of COVID. So, Paul, how many people internationally have died of COVID, and why are you scared to say it out loud? Because you've risked your career on saving the kids from COVID. Okay. COVID kills kids.
What do you mean?
Particularly sick kids. Particularly sick kids with sick lungs.
You're talking people who tested positive for
people who have had a severe COVID infection, ended up in ICU, flooded with COVID in their lungs, and they died.
Well,
in New York, in Milan, in London.
That's not the numbers you're quoting.
New Delhi.
These are not the numbers you're quoting. And why do you believe that they died
of COVID? Tell me your numbers.
Why do you believe they died of
COVID? You tell me your numbers.
Hold on, let me finish this point, Dan. Why do you think they died of COVID and not from the medical protocols that the hospitals were using? The remdesivir, the intubation, the ECMO that they visited on unvaccinated people.
You'd like to know why? I'll tell you why. Would you like to know why? Because I'm not a conspiratorial nutbag. That's why. Because I believe in mainstream medicine, and I know that viruses kill people and treatment treats people.
Yeah, but so does non-treatment of post-viral infection. So in the past,
why are you so scared to say how many people died of COVID?
The elderly people would have required antibiotics. A lot of these patients died because the COVID protocols dropped antibiotic treatment.
Randomized clinical trials, Paul.
No, there are studies that show that the absence, the dropping of azithromycin and doxycycline and the normal post-viral treatments that we give to elderly in the community, they've had a cold, they've had a flu, they've had COVID, they get a secondary bacterial infection and they die. Because of the blindness of the protocols, we've had massive amounts of iatrogenic harm, as in doctor and hospital and protocol-based harm, which included.
I'm a fan of protocols.
But this is the danger because those protocols removed things like antibiotics that would have saved many of these lives, which you are blaming on COVID. The rush to intubation, those protocols for intubation and end-of-life care, killed many people. That you're saying died of COVID.
Hard to prove.
No
SIBO effect. No SIBO effect.
No, because
the
all-cause death stops
randomized
at borders.
Data, Paul?
It stops at borders. The all-cause mortality from COVID around the world stops at borders. It's not the virus. It was hospital care. It was these protocols that have been killing people.
We were learning on the fly.
Not the virus, not
what
the
do you
antibodies. It was the protocols which led them to being intubated, which led to massive numbers of deaths early on from the so-called COVID. It was the failure to treat antibiotics. It was the use of remdesivir, which is a toxic substance. And you remember at the time they were saying,
I use remdesivir, it saves lives. I disagree.
We don't understand why people are getting renal failure. We've never seen a virus. We've never seen a renal.
We do. You don't.
A respiratory virus that causes renal failure. Well, remdesivir causes renal failure. I mean,
in toxic doses. Well, you're not talking to an idiot, Paul. Can I ask you a question? First of all, when the hydroxychloroquine and ivermectin data came out, I was very excited. Finally, we've got something cheap that we can roll out internationally, even in poor countries where they can't have high-end treatment, and we're going to save lives. And so the mainstream scientists did randomized, double-blinded, placebo-controlled trials in severe COVID of ivermectin and of hydroxychloroquine, and it didn't work. So from the mainstream point of view, those treatments are available, but they don't work, and every single treatment has the potential for harm. Ivermectin has a small risk of harm, but it's not zero.
They're very safe drugs. Ivermectin.
They don't work, but they're not zero side effects.
Even if you say that they have absolutely no effect, they're not toxic. So there was no downside.
A small percentage. No, there is always a downside. All medicines have a side effect.
Tiny.
But if you give it to a million people,
in fact, vitamin C is Panadol is more toxic than these drugs.
I agree.
So,
but it's not zero risk. Zero benefit, some risk.
It's close enough. Now, having said that, I saw the fraud. Okay, I saw what happened with the fraudulent Surgisphere paper in the Lancet. They put up this complete and utter fraud, and straight after that, all the studies that the WHO and the UN and other organizations were using to study hydroxychloroquine were pulled based on this fraudulent paper. We know why they did
multiple papers.
We know why they did it. We know why they did it, because if they could show anything,
because Zarian Mafia, I'm leaving.
If we could show anything that had an effect against COVID, they would not be able to get their emergency use authorization for the synthetic gene-based shots.
It's not a gene-based shot. Anyway,
it is. What the pseudo
mRNA?
N1. No, it's N1 methyl pseudouridine. It's not the nucleotide that exists in nature.
Can we go back to my original question, Paul? How many children have died internationally of COVID?
It's a tiny number. It's a tiny number.
Can you tell it to the public so they know? Because you keep saying next to zero, but thousands of children have died internationally of COVID.
Because again, you're saying died of COVID.
Can you tell me your numbers? You got your numbers? Tell me your
No,
numbers.
we're going to define what we're talking about. We're going to define what we're talking about.
Goldman's got to mute his screen. Can you tell me your numbers? The scientific genius for the economy. Goldman's got to mute his. It's Altman. There you go. So, Paul, how many children internationally have died of COVID? You can give me your numbers. I've told you mine. It's thousands and thousands. How many people do you think?
Well, I'm trying to answer you that died.
Give me a number. You've risked your career on this.
Died of COVID.
Yes, died of COVID.
As opposed to died with a positive PCR.
Yes, died of actual severe COVID disease.
And you're talking
how many, Paul? You've risked your career on this, so you should know. You said that the risk of death from COVID is zero. It's not zero. It's close to zero. Thank God. It's very rare, but it's not zero. Thousands of Americans died of COVID.
And to your point, it's the same with the vaccine. The deaths have been largely weighted in the elderly. It's just like with the COVID test. It goes up.
New Zealand data shows you that.
The problem is that young people are still dying was all through the spectrum. From neonatal mortality has doubled in many countries. We are having young people dying. Look, you look at insurance data. Okay, you look at the
actuary data. Have you looked at the report from the Australian actuaries to explain excess deaths in Australia? And the majority of them are from severe COVID infection.
Yeah,
the actuaries whose job it is to work out how people died.
You're not being consistent. You're not being consistent because you're saying now we have Omicron. We've got Omicron.
It's less severe. A small percentage died.
It kills very few people, and yet the all-cause mortality figure is very significant. You know,
there's this very complicated concept, Paul, I'd like to explain to you,
including in younger people. They're dying at multiples of the numbers that they should be, and it is confirmed by these are people in working age. All right,
working age. They're dying of COVID.
So 25 to 65, especially the 45 to 65 group, they're dying in large numbers.
They're dying of COVID. Get your booster.
And they're the ones that worked for the Fortune 500 companies, which had the mandate. In all of history, the employed cohort had the lower death rates because they had better health, they had better health care.
How do you explain the data?
They had death rates 40% of the general public cohort. What happened in 2021 around the mandates and that? It flipped. People who were employed were now dying at increased numbers. Greatly increased numbers.
That's because most of them got vaccinated.
Yes. So the
I'd
vaccine,
like to draw your attention to a specific concept that you find very hard to get.
The vaccine was one factor. The vaccine was the key.
The infection, not the vaccine. The infection is the key factor.
Because the unemployed also got infected. But they
ask you this question?
But their death rates and life insurance claims hadn't gone off the chart.
Can I talk to you about something? What do you think is the death rate from COVID, Paul? You risked your career on this. You should know this. What's the death rate from COVID?
The death rate. So you're talking infection fatality?
Of COVID infection. Yep.
It's of the order of the seasonal flu.
For example, one in how many?
That's correct.
1%.
It's similar to a severe flu.
So if the entire country got COVID and the risk is 0.1%, 20,000 people will die. That's maths, Paul. Welcome to maths. You've got a 0.1% mortality, 20,000 people will die. What's the excess death rate currently? Oh, it's about, tens of thousands because they're dying of COVID. It's a very small.
No, that's not correct. That is not correct.
Okay, Phil can tell me. What do you think is the mortality rate from COVID?
That is not correct.
You tell me what the mortality rate from COVID is. Go right ahead.
Okay. More people right now are dying unexplained deaths.
They're explained by COVID.
In huge numbers. And the government,
That's conspiratorial bullshit thinking.
I'm
I'm in
sorry.
the hospital system, and I see people come to
I'm
hospital
sorry.
and die.
I know you're
I
in
see
this.
the statistics. The
I know
Melbourne
you're in this.
sudden death, the Melbourne sudden death organisation have
I'm
gone across
sorry.
the Australian cardiac arrest figures, and they found no change in cardiac arrest unexplained across Australia since vaccination was rolled out. What's the death rate from COVID?
We have to go by the Australian Bureau of Statistics, official statistics. They are now reporting more unexplained deaths than ever post-vaccine rollouts.
Post-COVID pandemic. Post-pandemic. It's all COVID. The actuaries say it's COVID. Mainstream says it's COVID.
Please don't interrupt me. You've disparaged my character before. I heard that.
Yeah, no, I have no respect for you as a
and
scientist.
I will not
Do it again in
disparage
public.
your character ever. And I hope you afford me the same respect. Now, I base what I say on data. I've gone into print. You can read what I say.
I have read it.
Then you shouldn't be saying what you're saying if you've read it. Because
the thing is, I've read your data and other people's data as well.
Sorry. Please stop interrupting me. It's very, very disconcerting. I won't participate in this discussion on this basis. You have to listen to fact and you have to read fact. For example, myocarditis is not rare and it is serious post-COVID vaccination. There are two credible prospective studies. Only two have been done so far. Both have agreed that there is about a 3% rate of detection of myocarditis using troponin T. You know about the sensitivity of troponin T in detecting myocarditis.
And other diseases.
3%. If you multiply that across the Australian population, you have 500,000 people with potential heart damage. And that is why you see athletes all over the world post-exercise or during exercise dropping dead at about 22 times the historical rates. It's because they have subclinical myocarditis, which sets up arrhythmias. You're a cardiologist, you know this, and that is why it's happening. You cannot deny this. There are videos all over the world of people dropping dead.
Would you like to respond?
Dropping dead. Politicians, bureaucrats, news readers.
Happy to respond. Would you like to respond?
People just
dropping
dead. If you say myocarditis is 1 in 10,000, then why have I met dozens of people with myocarditis?
Because you attract them. Because you're in a vaccine skeptic movement. And the nocebo effect. Can I go back to the data? The troponin data is frankly a blow up because troponin goes up if you sneeze too hard. Troponin is a very non-specific marker. If you're septic, it goes up. If you've got renal impairment, it goes up. Lots of things elevate troponin, and you would expect anything that causes an inflammatory response to call a mild elevation in troponin. It's not clinically significant. I've looked after troponin positive, genuine vaccine-caused myocarditis, no question. The mRNA vaccines cause myocarditis, no question. Most of the people I've looked after have been in hospital for 2 or 3 days, took big doses of anti-inflammatories, and the myocarditis is resolved within a week. When you see myocarditis from COVID, it's horrendous. They're in ICU, they're on ECMO, and some of them had to go into transplant. So there's a different beast. Just because you've got myocarditis doesn't make it a death sentence. And the risk of myocarditis is low.
Why would a respiratory illness give you myocarditis?
We think that it causes an autoimmune attack on the heart, but it's rare, thankfully.
How?
About 1 in
It's just
10,000.
a respiratory.
There's a chemical. No, it's not a respiratory.
Aren't we? I mean, we've had coronaviruses since the caves.
I've looked
so
after. I've looked after. You've not looked after COVID. Phil hasn't looked after COVID. I'm not sure if Paul had the misfortune of having to look after severe COVID, but it's horrible. They clot entire bodies. They clot in their hearts. They get strokes. They clot off their bowel. It affects the kidneys directly. When you get septic shock, you get a very low blood pressure and your kidneys aren't perfused and you get terrible kidney failure. Kidney failure and COVID infection is quite common.
So
COVID
kidney
infection is
failure, blood clots, strokes, all
Comes
from
from
a
COVID.
respiratory illness.
It's not a respiratory illness. It's a whole body illness. You
COVID's
get
not a respiratory.
encephalitis.
Then why did we wear masks if it's not a respiratory
It's stuck
illness?
because it gets in and out through your nose, Michael.
So it gets in now through your nose. So that's
Yes,
a
you
respiratory
breathe it.
illness, right? I mean, sorry, I'm
It's,
an
no,
idiot.
it's a
But if
quite.
you breathe it in, it's a
Have you
respiratory
seen
illness,
measles
correct?
COVID? Are you familiar with measles? Measles is a respiratory illness, but it gives you a rash on your skin. It affects other parts of your body. This is why I find it really annoying to get
Yeah,
medical
I had
advice
it and
from
I
a
survived
playwright.
that too.
But it's a respiratory illness. So how did it affect your skin? Such a scientific genius. I don't want to take health advice from Michael, but I'm interested to talk to Phil
I'm not
about.
asking health advice. I'm asking questions from a layman.
And I'm happy to give you the answer. The answer is you breathe in the COVID, it goes through your whole body, and it's horrible. You look at some
You
footage
said
in New York.
Omicron now it's not as bad, right?
Thank heavens. Yep.
Yeah.
But you
And
still
how
get,
do you
yeah,
test for it? Does the rat test able to tell the difference between old
there's
COVID
crossover,
and
but
Omicron?
thankfully it still picks most infections. Yep.
So the rat
But
test.
Phil,
So
can you
how
t-
do you
can
know
you
which
tell-
one you're dealing with, though?
You can do a PCR.
And the PCR goes, that's Omicron, that's Delta.
You can. Yep. That's how
original.
PCR works, Michael. Yep. But it's not a lesson. I'm interested to pin down, Phil, what's the rate of clinical myocarditis post-vaccine? Clinical, with symptoms, changes on echo, changes on ECG. What's the incidence of clinical myocarditis post-COVID vaccination, Phil?
There's only been 2 prospective studies done. And the reason for that is the industry doesn't want to do these types of
Just
studies.
answer the question. What's the number?
I am answering the question.
It's a numerical question. You can
According
answer the
to
number.
troponin T, which
That's
is
clinical.
accepted
No,
as
it's
a
not. I'm a
reliable.
cardiologist. It's not. I'm telling you. I'm a cardiologist. You don't diagnose myocarditis on a blood test. It's clinical. They have symptoms, ECG changes, echo findings, MRI, PET.
You occupy a very precious position in that you're the only cardiologist in the world that I've ever heard of that says troponin T is unreliable to detect myocarditis.
It's not specific. It goes up in dozens of things. Ask any
People-
cardiologist in the world.
Cardiologists all over the world rely on troponin T. Now, what
Not
they
as a
should
sole
be
diagnostic test. It's not specific. It goes up in pneumonia. It goes up in renal failure. It goes up in sepsis. It goes up in pulmonary embolism. It goes up in everything. Troponin is not specific. We rely on a clinical diagnosis. You can look it up. There are international guidelines for the diagnosis of myocarditis, and they involve clinical signs, symptoms, ECG, echo, MRI, PET if you have to. We don't use troponin by itself in isolation for a diagnosis of myocarditis. So what is the rate of clinical myocarditis post-COVID vaccine, Phil?
It's
I'm telling you
about
it's
2.5, not clinical, but subclinical, about
clinical.
2.5%. If
So
you
ask
look
the clinical
at
question.
if you look at the numbers of clinical myocarditis, you have to get
Please.
those figures from indirect sources because the
Yes.
proper clinical trials have not been done. One of the sources that I used was an interview by a very prominent Sydney cardiologist. You would know him. I won't name his name.
Not
who
Chris
said,
Mann.
no, who said that post-vaccine rollouts, he has seen at least 100 patients in his office with clinical myocarditis.
I
Now,
agree. They come to see us. We look after them.
now,
I've looked after
If I could just finish my thought, please. If one cardiologist, a credible, reliable, fairly famous cardiologist, says that he's seen 100 cases post-introduction of the vaccines, and there are 1,200 cardiologists in the country, you do the numbers. It's 120,000 probably symptomatic cases of myocarditis.
Can I ask Phil, what's the time course from vaccine to myocarditis? What's the time course in your understanding?
Look, there have been studies done which look at
My experience, it happens in the first 2
troponin
weeks.
after a few weeks. These studies have gone on for like a month from
Yep.
memory. One was a Swiss study, one was a Thai study.
So we'd expect to see most of them in the first month. So when you've got randomized, double-blind, placebo-controlled trials with more than one vaccine, I think 4 vaccines, and with now 100,000 participants that don't show your ridiculous rates of myocarditis, why would we not see it there? You're saying, my impression is that you're exaggerating the side effects because there's a giant nocebo effect. You roll out 2 billion doses of a vaccine internationally, people are going to blame that for everything. But you've got randomized, double-blind, placebo-controlled data out to 6 months in 100,000 participants. Why didn't we see a giant number of pericarditis, myocarditis then? Because it's rare.
You don't have that data.
What,
you don't have that
trial, the Moderna trial, the
trial. You don't have, those trials did not look at troponin T.
But I'm saying clinical myocarditis, clinical myocarditis, clinical myocarditis, clinical myocarditis, clinical myocarditis.
Daniel, can subclinical myocarditis kill you? Could it lead you to not wake up in the morning? Because a lot of people who are dying in the excess mortality are not coming to you. They're not coming.
Okay. Have you seen Paul?
They're just not waking. They're just not waking up in the morning.
Have you seen?
They're just simply not waking up in the morning, and they didn't have clinical myocarditis. They're just dead.
Paul, they probably died of COVID. Paul, they probably died of COVID. They probably died of COVID.
They went to bed. They ran a marathon. They did a triathlon the day before.
Nocebo effect, Paul.
And they're dying post. These are not even people who follow our side. They're just dead. They're just dead.
You said they died of COVID in their sleep.
Yeah, some
it
did.
Isn't COVID. I mean, when I meet people who have COVID, they're really sick. They know they've got something. They're coughing. They really feel run down.
Yep.
These people are really healthy. Go to bed. Just don't wake up. So what happens in the sleep? COVID just comes along, gets all the symptoms, and then they're just dead. So
there's two things.
That's how COVID works.
There's two things.
And also another question too. While I've got a chance, you're a cardiologist. How dangerous is myocarditis? Because the way you talk about it, like, oh, we got rid of it. Is it a major thing or a minor thing?
Depends. There are variations. It's a spectrum. It's like saying how dangerous is flu. Some people just knock it off. Some people are in intensive care. And the worst myocarditis are caused from viruses. It's my personal experience, having treated dozens of patients with vaccine-caused myocarditis, that it's been mild. I'm aware of one death internationally of a severe myocarditis case directly related to COVID vaccines, but it's rare. But I think it's important to reflect on the clinical rates of myocarditis, pericarditis in the vaccine. And I don't know why Phil's avoiding the question. What's the rate of clinical...
Is the damage from myocarditis permanent in the heart, or is it temporary?
There's a spectrum. It's like saying, what's the damage from flu? Some people get away with it with no damage. Some people get scarred lungs.
As an average.
Most people have no
the heart is the core of a human being.
Yeah.
And you're saying that COVID causes myocarditis.
Very much so, yes.
How dangerous is it? This is a respiratory illness that
It's
somehow
not,
can
it
get
comes in the nose, but it goes to your whole body. COVID affects your whole body. I don't know why you think it only goes to your lungs. COVID virus is found in your entire body. It's not limited to your lungs.
Again, the Tavali paper was a large Israeli study done before the vaccine, over 500,000 people, and it showed that the virus wasn't causing myocarditis. So
clinically, we've seen it. Have you looked up
you have to be ignoring this huge, just for starters, you're ignoring this huge study out of Israel, pre-vaccine.
Not ignoring it. I read it.
Where massive numbers of people had COVID, and they didn't find myocarditis. So this is what I mean. I don't know how you can make some of the claims you make, but because
I read both papers. I've read your paper and I've read all the mainstream papers, and the mainstream papers are telling me that the rates of myocarditis from COVID are clinically worse and more common than the rates with the vaccine. I can give you all the references. Can I talk about sudden death? So there's a group in Melbourne who are international experts.
Give us the references.
I've already given you dozens of references, Phil, and you know it, and you just mocked me, and then you knocked off communications.
The data does not show that. I'm sorry. The data does not show that.
The data does show it. I'm happy to bring up the papers for you if you like. I can show you a video. Would you like to share a video together and we can watch it looking at all the references? The
No.
myocarditis is more severe. The troponin stuff is bullshit because I treat troponin every day. They say, Nino, come down to emergency. I've got a cardiac patient. And I get there and it's a 90-year-old with urosepsis and they've got a positive troponin, nothing cardiac going on at all. The troponin test is not specific. Do you know what not specific means? Let me explain to the rest of the audience. Some tests are very good at picking up a test, but it only means that test is only for that disease. So a COVID PCR means you've got COVID virus. It's very specific. If you do a blood test to say you've got, say, a elevation of muscle enzymes in your body, that could be a heart problem, but it could also be a muscle problem. It's not specific to a heart. The troponin test is not specific. You're going to have to learn that, Phil. Go on, I'll give you a reference for that. Let's talk sudden death. Sudden death, there's an expert.
Troponin is not specific for heart muscle damage.
Troponin is not specific for primary cardiac problems. Your heart gets annoyed at lots of things. If you get urosepsis, go to ICUs.
You're the only
You need to talk to more cardiologists and
Right.
ask them very specifically this question. Have you been annoyed by calls to the intensive care for patients without a primary cardiac diagnosis who have elevated troponins? Everybody in ICU has elevated troponins because their hearts are annoyed because they're sick. But let's talk sudden death. There is a group in Melbourne, very well-respected international group, who help families who've had relatives drop dead from sudden cardiac death, from diseases you've probably never heard of, Michael. Long QT syndrome, hypertrophic cardiomyopathy, Brugada syndrome. There are diseases that run through families that cause people to die in their sleep. They're moderately common, unfortunately. They're occurring in 1 in a few thousand. So every year for
Oh yeah, look, all my life people have been just dropping dead. In fact, I actually know
you're
they
interrupting. And Bruce,
sorry, they
Especially
haven't.
kids are dropping
I'm sorry,
dead.
but they
Yeah.
haven't been.
Kids-
Dan,
kids-
you're my
kids
age.
have
You
heart
haven't grown
attacks,
up.
right?
People just dropping dead,
Yeah.
They do.
dropping dead. You haven't
I
got
encourage you.
it, brother.
I encourage you.
Bullshit,
I
we
encourage
do the
you.
same thing.
I encourage you
Come
to look up the
on,
website.
something's happened. Come on.
I encourage-
People
I
just
encourage-
fucking drop
COVID
dead, drop
happened.
dead, drop
COVID
dead.
happened. COVID happened. I encourage you to look up a website. It's called SADS. SADS. It's a sudden
Yeah,
death
is that your
support service
website?
for Australia. No, it's the sudden. Yeah, just stop the ad hominem attacks because they're not helping. So there's an expert group in Melbourne. I have
Really?
a lot of respect for
Don't
them.
crack yourself.
I'm an expert in cardiac electrophysiology. When people drop dead, which doctor do they refer them to, Michael?
When you have,
If you have a family member, drop dead,
Dan, I've heard of Hokum. I've heard of Brugada.
If someone goes, I think I've been injured by the vaccine, you go,
No,
poof, no, you haven't, it's COVID.
And
COVID.
I've heard of. I've looked after people.
You've heard of long QT.
I'm mindful of Hokum. I'm mindful of Brugada. These are the sort of things that kill people under anaesthetic unexpectedly.
And long QT.
And long QT, yeah, but
do long QT patients drop dead in sleep?
Yes.
And is it the most
but
common cause of sudden death?
But Michael's point is right. I mean, these things happened, but they were rare.
They're still rare.
They're not still rare. That's the.
Let me explain. There's a group in Melbourne who published the Australian cardiac arrest data. Have you read it? It's published. It came out a couple of months ago.
The point of me,
you haven't read it.
And what Phil is saying is that it is not rare anymore. And
it's
so
rare.
Something has changed, and I can tell you that
it's still rare.
The Australian Heart Foundation is doing this Codex study where they're looking at the genetic basis of sudden death.
Yes,
they give the example in the press of a young fit man who died who had they believe Brugada.
Yes, and long QT. It's predominantly long QT. And can I tell you that
what has suddenly changed in our genetics in the last 2 years?
The publicity.
I bet you the one thing that this study is going, this vast codex, a database that they're developing, if they're not looking at their exposure to the COVID vaccines, they're complete bunk. And it's because of the exact blindness that you exhibit.
I'm not blind. I'm looking at your papers.
They will ignore the invisible elephant in the room. Brugada existed, Hokum existed. It killed people in small numbers. It continues to kill people in small numbers. But something new is on the scene, which is killing people in large numbers.
Yeah.
We're seeing it in the excess mortality. We're seeing it in the insurance data. You're saying it's COVID. You're saying it's COVID.
It is.
The Australian Heart Foundation will say it's Brugada. Someone else will say it's climate change.
No, COVID. We're all saying it's COVID.
No, this is the invisible elephant in the room.
You said Omicron wasn't as dangerous. So how can it still be COVID?
It's the vaccine.
There's no evidence that it's COVID. do the autopsies. How many autopsies have you referred, Dr. Dan, of patients who
this year.
Six. You referred 6 autopsies.
The unexplained death this year. Yep.
And what was the result?
2 pulmonary embolism, 4 coronary, and 1 was a CMV myocarditis.
And did you take in the autopsy, you can determine if a cardiac cause of death is due to a virus or the vaccine. You do know that.
Pardon me?
You do know that it's possible to determine in terms of cause of death whether someone died due to the vaccine or the virus by taking.
I'm familiar with that theory, but I don't subscribe to it. I don't subscribe to that theory. Can I just say one very important thing?
It's not a theory, Daniel. It's called pathology.
Look,
I'm sorry.
So, look, can I say something here, Michael, with all due respect?
Okay.
Usually when people say that, they're about to disrespect the other person.
I'm not going to disrespect you. You can believe whatever you want to believe. But I've gone into print. Everyone can read my Substacks. If you don't believe that you can tell the difference between a cardiac death caused by the virus or caused by the vaccine, it is my opinion that you are completely incorrect. With that, I'm not going to waste any more of my time participating in this discussion because it's not going anywhere.
Can I just say one thing briefly because I wanted to convey this? So this group in Melbourne, who I respect gratefully, I've worked with them for years, have looked at the cardiac arrest rates, out-of-hospital cardiac arrest rates in Australia post-vaccine, and there's been no change. It's published. You can Google this. Google Australian cardiac arrest, COVID vaccine, Google that. The study will come up. It's published, peer-reviewed. The rates have not changed. The publicity's changed. I've looked after these families for years because that's my job. I'm a cardiac electrophysiologist. I put in defibrillators. I see tragic cardiac sudden death all the time in athletes, in young people, in sleep. You've never seen it because you've been doing your normal jobs. It never comes up. I see it probably every month. A family comes to me because they've lost somebody suddenly from a cardiac arrest. When somebody has a cardiac arrest, they call the electrophysiologist to find out because if one person dies, their siblings are at risk. It's inherited. You got a 50-50 chance of your kid, of your siblings and your parents having it, and you can protect them from sudden death with this. If everybody thinks it's a vaccine, they're not going to be looking for the actual cause, which is long QT syndrome, Brugada, hypertrophic cardiomyopathy. Sudden death rates have not changed. Look at it, Paul. It's published data from Australia.
You're not answering.
That's a typical example of misinformation. I'm sorry.
It's published data. Look it up.
I'm sorry.
Cardiac arrest rates have not changed.
Dan, you're not answering Philip's.
Dr. Dan, you come on and you make statements, but you never back it up. I'm telling you, there's a study. I can provide you the reference. You always say that. And then I give you the references and you ignore them. And my statements are supported by fact. Anyone can go to my Substacks. I have, and I found it biased and misleading. Okay. Thank you very much for the discussion. It's been very interesting. I wish you all a nice Sunday morning. Thank you. Bye. Thank you.
Yeah, I have to go too. Take care, Dan. Good luck.
So how many kids died of COVID, Paul? Thousands. And you've risked your career on it, and you should go back to work.
Dan,
get a Novavax and go back to work. Get a Novavax and go back to work.
Do you think it's right doctors just because they want to question the narrative? Doctors of 30 years standing. Do you think that's right? You're muted, buddy.
An act on it.
You think that's right? I mean, there's doctors. We've got Dr. Hobart, Dr. Miley Trin. There's about 5-6 other doctors who've retired. There's nurses everywhere, scrillions of nurses, all because they had questions or challenged the narrative. Do you think that's right? That APRA has that power? Sorry,
conspiratorial. If you have somebody who thinks
APRA put out a letter. You must have got the same letter.
Yep.
That if you question the narrative, you'll be sacked. Yep.
No, you'll be warned.
Science is never fixed. Would you agree? Would you agree that science is never fixed?
Fair.
Okay.
It evolved.
And you guys are on the front line. So you're watching this rolling out. So shouldn't you guys have the freedom of speech to go, hey, guys, this is great what we're doing, but we're seeing things here that need to be questioned.
I think we
any
do,
of those
but
doctors that do, they lose their career, their status, they're thrown out. Don't you think that's a bit strange?
there's a difference between telling the truth and telling conspiratorial theories. And
No, they question it. They question it. Even if you question it, doctors say this. I've got a friend whose son now is debilitated.
You look at the wording of that letter.
A major Australian actor. He might be watching. His son, the doctors keep saying, yeah, look, it'll go away. Yeah, it'll go away. It'll go away. He's just getting worse. He was going to be a professional basketballer, and this man was pro-jab. The last time he was in hospital with his beautiful son who's getting worse, he said to the doctors, is this the jab? Is this the jab? And the cardi-fucking-ologist said to him, I'm not allowed to say that. That's the regime that you guys are supporting. And if you want to trust people, you have to let doctors talk openly, even if they disagree with you. Because the one thing people want from doctors isn't their PhD on the wall. It's their ability to tell their truth to them so they can take it in. Then they can go to another doctor and get another truth. But they want the truth. And at the moment,
they want to be listened to.
Truth. This is like a debate. It's one of the only second debate I've even seen about all of this in the 3 years. ABC has had no debates. Politicians have had no debates. Fucking no one's had any debates. It doesn't make any sense, and that's why we don't trust you guys. And we go in and you guys tell us, oh, it's anxiety. I've got a woman here in Colac who's been severely injured, and she was in hospital, other people in hospital severely injured from the jab, so they believe. She had 3 or 4 fits in front of a group of doctors. Huge fits. Once they moved on, one doctor sat down with her, and I've recorded this, and I don't edit my videos, so I've got an agenda. I put them all up as they are, boring or not. And she said the doctor sat down with her and said, all you've got is anxiety. Now, that is bullshit. Right. Anxiety doesn't call fits. But this is all anxiety. We need our doctors back. And the only way we get a doctor back is when we've got a doctor, a patient, that's it. No government in between. Just doctor and patient. That's all we need from our doctors. We want to trust our doctors to tell us, yes, you're going to die. Yes, you're going to do. This is what I think. You can check out with someone else. That's what we want. We don't need a doctor like you sitting here calling everyone a fucking idiot and this, if you dare to question. And I've been around Australia. I don't want to be doing this. I was loving my life as a playwright. But I've got 1,500 interviews, and a lot of them are with people who've been injured or beaten up by the cops, had their lives destroyed and everything simply because they had questions. And I actually don't say don't take the jab. Now I'm glad I didn't take it. I was just pro-choice. And they got rid of pro-choice. And then they got rid of freedom of speech. You wouldn't get censored, but anyone like us would. And when people are censoring you, that's evil. When people take away your freedom of choice, that's evil. And when doctors aren't allowed to speak, that's evil. And you might not see it, brother, but that's where you are. And you're the only one who can fix it because you're within the system. And instead, you're sitting here defending it. And every time somebody brings up something, you don't know, I've got the things. But you're fucking lost, brother. You're lost.
I've got to disagree. Quite the inverse.
And the public is over gaslighting, okay? They're over gaslighting. They can see reality without needing the journals and without needing the experts. They're seeing the shots didn't stop them getting infected. They're seeing people around them being injured in rates that couldn't be true if it was safe.
SIBO effect. SIBO randomized controlled trial. What would it take, Paul, for you to be proven safe?
So Dan, those autopsies, those 5 autopsies, you realize that they can do slides of the heart.
I've read it. I've seen the study.
They can stain. They can stain.
You say it's not safe and effective. What would it take for a trial? I'm familiar. I know.
They can show, but the immunohistochemistry is not being done.
But Paul, if you're telling me that there would be no trial that they could possibly do that would ever convince you that you're safe and effective,
no, I didn't
how do
say
we
that.
supposed to?
I said
Okay, what would it take?
But I didn't say that. Now, for the third time,
what would it take?
Independent.
A royal commission.
Independent.
Right now, royal commission.
Placebo-controlled
A royal
studies.
commission into
But you're a realist, Paul.
A complete, unbiased royal commission. That's what would help.
It's expensive.
Why can't we have that?
Because it's expensive.
We've got it there for this. Why can't we have that? Why are we having this little sort of, this little sort of whatever they've got. Why can't we have a full-blown royal commission, totally unbiased?
Because it costs money.
Why?
Because it's
Who
expensive.
gives a fuck?
You want to
Lockdowns were
increase taxes?
expensive.
Go for it.
What's
Lockdowns
more
were
important than
expensive.
dying people? It's
What
more
was the-
important than people dying. We're just spending millions on we're sending millions to Ukraine. Instead of sending 100 million to Ukraine, why don't we hold back $3 million and do a royal commission into what's happened so
And
we
I can-
make sure it happens better next time? Even
can
if you're
calmly-
correct,
yeah.
next time we do the marketing better, we do this better, we sell it better. Why don't we do that?
They're doing committees, they're doing investigations, they're just not calling it a
a
royal
royal
commission.
commission. There's too many deaths. The country is being violated, both sides. Why can't we have a royal commission?
Because from the mainstream point of view, there is no scandal to investigate.
Oh,
the mandate-
really?
I don't believe that.
Yep,
People don't
I'm
believe
telling
that.
I'm telling you, you're asking our opinion. Why aren't they doing it? Is the politicians aren't doing it because the Chinese Communist Party and the Khazarian Mafia and Bill Gates and the World Health Organization are out to get you. They're not doing it because they ask the experts like me and they say, is the COVID vaccine safe and effective? No, quite the opposite. But half your audience does. Half your audience
We
does.
just want to know what's happening. We just want to know what's
I'll
in the
tell you.
vaccine, what's in the
It's in
contracts.
the ingredients are
Why
listed.
can't we see the contracts. What are the and we just want to see the data.
The
And we
data is
just want a royal
published.
commission.
100,000. You
royal
don't need one.
commission.
Dan, it has been entertaining
asked,
talking with you
I
today.
told
It has been entertaining talking with you today.
Next time we
yeah,
meet,
yeah.
I want you to know the number of children that have died internationally of COVID.
But I feel like we've probably had our quota of gaslighting for the morning, and we're probably choking on the gaslighting at the moment. So let's let the air clear, and maybe we'll talk again in future. But I feel you're not doing the cause of trust a service when you talk over people. And when you do ad hominem attacks, and you probably felt safe to do that in the last few years because of all the support you've had with media, social media, and the like. But the populations are waking up now. They're seeing stuff that isn't explained with your expert assertions.
Called the nocebo effect.
And you can call it nocebo. I know this nocebo effect well, and this is a nocebo effect. So look, I'm gonna have to head off. I did as well as I could on one glass of coffee, but
And you can look at the replay and work out who started calling names first, Paul.
nice seeing.
I'm not going to take shit from an actor when he starts to deride my medical opinion.
Playwright. Playwright.
Yeah, playwright. Oh, that's much better. That's a much better medical qualification.
All right.
Read the randomized studies, get your boosters, stay safe.
See ya.
Thanks, Michael.
Didn't see that.
In this room for days, the world outside is making daisy chains, but she is tired. Tired of all the red tape, tired of all the heartache. The weight of the world's too heavy for a child. And we wait, we pray, while she strings together hopes to see another day. We wait, we pray, while she strings together hopes to see another day. She won't take your poison, too many have fallen, and what the does it do anyway? She should have a choice. Ain't this a freelance still? And how dare you discriminate? It's doesn't today, tomorrow it's you, but the world only sees what they show on the news. No daily counts now. Those still on the pain, seeking absolution. Hey, we got our waters from a pipe. There is a better way they have been ignoring, and there will be a price to pay in time. We wait, we pray, while she strings together hopes to see another day. We wait, we pray, while she strings together hopes to see another day.